welcome to Them's Writing Words, a podcast discussing selected fanfictions from the world of pastel horse literature. My name is Scribbler, and I will be your moderator today, inasmuch as I moderate anything. Joining me for this discussion, we have Cerridwen.
Hello.
Clever Hooves.
Howdy.
Midnight 29.
Hello there.
Midori.
Greetings and bienvenue, Secret Saturdays.
And making his podcast debut, Wuten.
Hello, hello.
I want it said right now, we didn't know this was going to be his first fic, but I'm kind of glad that it is when you find out what it is. But this was not on purpose. Right, so today we're looking at the fanfic Flankology by Fire Gazer the Alchemist, as chosen by Cerridwen. The synopsis reads,
Applejack gets put in an awkward spot when Twilight asks if she can spend the day staring at her butt.
The story was published on 2nd of November 2015 and clocks in at 6,607 words. So the first part of this, as ever, is going to be spoiler-free, so that if anybody wants to go and listen to Cerridwen's reading of this for themselves or go and read it on fanfiction, they can, and then come back to us. I will let you know where the spoilers come in. So first of all, tags. Do we believe they are accurate? The tags are romance and comedy. So spoiler-free version. Cerridwen, do you think that the tags are accurate?
Mostly, yes.
Do I take it this is something we'll come back to later?
Oh, I think I do agree with the tags, but there are some tags which I want to apply separately that are not on the list.
Well, we'll come to those when we get into spoiler territory. Clever?
I mean, is it romance?
That is literally a point from later on. Is this actually a romance? So...
Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like this is almost like, there should be like a tag for like, you know,
Creepy.
I was gonna say incel, fantasy, like.
Holy shit! Not what I thought you were gonna say.
Well, I mean,
He's not wrong.
I mean,
Yeah.
not wrong. Yeah, I can see where he's coming from, but we will have to keep that for spoilers.
I will, but I feel like that could be a tag here because, I mean, on one hand, you know,
I'm not sure Nighty would want to add that one to the tags on fanfiction. That's definitely an AO3 kind of tag.
I don't know what AO3 is.
Archive of Our Own. It's where all the other fanfiction goes.
Don't worry.
Where all the other? Like, what makes it other?
The fact
It's
that tags
my
like that
Fiction
exist.
after dark.
It's my kind of fan fiction. Let's put it that way.
Wow. Okay, because I have read
Fiction
stuff
with a
on
white
fanfic,
light.
but okay, it's that blue colored fiction. Got it. Anyway, yeah, I guess romance, comedy, sure, but also, you know, yeah, I think incel fantasy would be the one if I could make it up. I would put that in there too.
Yeah, I'm definitely coming back to that point later. Midnight, what do you reckon about the tags?
I thought the tags were pretty perfect. Like, I don't see anything you could add really. Maybe, yeah. It's maybe the cute tag.
I'm kind of wishing I'd asked you before I asked Clever. Yeah, Midnight is sweet and lovely, and Clever is a menace.
What? That's strongly worded.
I'm the favorite kid.
So is calling this an incel fantasy.
My goodness.
Well, we'll talk about that later.
We will indeed. Midori, what do you reckon about the tags?
I think that they're appropriate. Like, there's definitely like a comedic air to the overall story, and the romance. Well, it does come in towards the end, and it's kind of like budding in that regard. I still think that a romantic air is what it ends off on.
Budding or butting?
Yes.
Told you,
I'm go-
menace. An absolute menace to society.
I'm going to fill this pillow with butter, and I'm going to smack you with it.
Okay.
I don't want that pillow.
Oddly
I don't want that
interesting.
pillow.
Wooten, what do you reckon about the tags?
I think they're pretty accurate. I would personally add slice of life to it because other than that, spot on with the tags.
Thing is, what makes it slice of life? Because I do hear that quite a bit now.
There's sort of a it's not like an overarching adventure story. It's not an action story. Slice of life is more of like just like day-to-day activities.
Yeah, like sitting down and having apple fritters and things together.
But this is not an everyday activity.
Like one of those earlier episodes of Friendship is Magic, like the episode, I think it was episode 3, literally, where it was they're trying to get Twilight to choose one of them for the ticket to the gala.
Yeah.
Gala.
Yeah. It's kind of like that. That's a very slice of life episode.
Yeah, because it's slice of life for the genre of the show. But yeah, you're right, Cerridwen. This isn't a general, a very. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. It's not a kind of thing that would happen in everyday life, except it kind of is, because Applejack would be kicking trees every day. Twilight would be doing research every day. They would just be having conversations about their friendship. There would be sharing of food and things. The fact that it was all predicated upon something that was not typical doesn't make it any less slice of life. And one of the things that I don't know about anybody else, but the way that I've always thought of slice of life writing is it's a bit more drawn out, a bit more lugubrious than other writing. Like if this was a proper full-out comedy, if it was more of like a screwball comedy or a crack comedy, it would be much faster. If it was a full-out romance, it would be much longer. There would be more schmaltzy bits to it. But it's because it's this very mild blend of both mixed in with just slice of life elements, it becomes more slice of life than either of the other two, I would say.
I would also suggest that slice of life doesn't irrevocably alter the status quo.
I suppose, yeah.
I mean, if it does, then it seems to transcend a slice of life into something a bit more meatier.
A bit more drama.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Cerridwen, can you give us a spoiler-free description of this story without giving away the ending? I know that that's basically the synopsis because it's not a very long story, but can you give us the spoiler-free description?
I can certainly try.
Yeah.
I have a point about that, if I may.
Oh, before or after she gives us spoiler-free description?
Maybe after.
Okay. Take it away, Cerridwen.
I think this is just going to be a rehash of what we already said, but basically, Twilight has been tasked by the Equestrian Department of Agriculture, aka the EDA, to study how farm work affects a pony's physique and decides the best to test on would be Applejack. Is this all in the name of science, or is there something more to Twilight's motives of staring at AJ's derriere?
So if that sounds interesting to you, you can go and listen to the reading. We are going to go more into spoilers now, and then after Cerridwen's given the full plot summary, with the spoilery ending, Clever is going to make his point. Yes. Yeah, I knew that joke was coming, and yet still. I let it happen. Right, Cerridwen, do you want to give away the ending now, so everybody's been thoroughly warned?
It's a little bit of column A, it's a little bit of column B. So...
How does Applejack find out? Because Applejack spends a lot of this story being thoroughly dense and not figuring out.
She's not entirely dense.
She's dense.
She has suspicions. It is like she susses it, and she clocks her, and she's like, "I'm not gonna approach on this until I have the actual whole evidence given to me." Is what I get the feeling of.
So she takes more of a scientific approach than the actual scientist.
She's noticing like a lot of odd things. She's like, okay, it can't be that. Maybe it's because she's sleepy. It can't be that. She's just hungry. Can't be that. What the fuck is going on? I'm going to wait for her to be very apparent with her with all this.
I think it's more that she just not dense, but more that it just doesn't cross her mind.
Certainly it doesn't until she picks up that sheaf of notes, because how does it end, Cerridwen?
She finds out that Twilight has been staring at her butt because she has a crush on her, so it literally had to be written out and she had to confront Twilight and say, "What the fuck? Is this real? Do you really like me?" And Twilight says, "Yes." And Applejack gets very upset that the EDA thing was just a ploy. Twilight says, no, it really was a scientific case, but it just so happened to, yes.
It just so happened to coincide quite nicely with her crush.
At the crack of dawn.
Yeah.
My God.
So, Clever, what was it you wanted to say?
I was going to say that for a plot all about plot, there wasn't very much plot. Yeah. Like
I like how we're all waiting for, like, right, we'll give you to that, and he's like, oh shit, it's a pun joke.
well, it's but really it's like that would it's if I had a it's kind of all in the description, like, Twilight has a crush on Applejack and has an opportunity to stare at her butt all day. Applejack lets her. Like, that is 95% of the fic.
She's
right
being
there.
a good friend. That's
Yeah.
all Applejack
Is
sees
that
her
what
as,
the
like,
standard
the
of good
best
friends
friend.
now? All right, so I can just go up to my good friends and say, for science, I need to stare at your ass all day.
And if they are your friend, they will let you.
Is that
If they
the
are a
boundary
good
of friendship?
friend,
Is that the
it's
friendship
required.
lesson? Dear Princess Celestia, today Applejack let me stare at her ass all day. That's how I know she's my soulmate.
Oh my god!
I mean, okay. So,
Dear Princess Celestia, nice
technically-
ass.
technically, if Princess Celestia is head of the EDA, it would literally be a letter to Celestia.
Oh my god, maybe she was like matchmaking and is like, for fuck's sake, this kid keeps thinking
No,
about
this
it.
is not much.
Oh,
This
come
is
on.
pranking.
That brings up another point. What is the Princess of Friendship doing basic research for? Like, how is she this arm of the government's bitch doing this, like, grunt work? Like, that to me seems odd, because she is a princess in this fic, because she has
I think she
wings.
volunteered for this.
Like, she did. She volunteered for this, and Twilight is known for her research at this point. She loves doing research. It's not a matter of, like, being their bitch or being a princess or any of that stuff. She loves to do this, so they probably reached out to her and it's like, hey, would you be up for doing this? It's like, yeah, in fact, I got somebody in mind.
Midnight?
I think it was just a letter sent to the ruler of that area, Ponyville, and Twilight took it upon herself because that's how she is, and she knew the perfect person.
Right.
Like, if this is a real research thing, then they'd be sending letters to all across Equestria. I mean, who are they studying in Philadelphia? Or, I don't know, why is the other place's names going out of my head? But, yeah.
Appaloosa, where
Yeah.
there's actual farmers.
I think the author needs to do, like, another comedy romance with, like, how does weather work affect Pegasus? Looking at you, Rainbow Dash.
Who are you going to ship Rainbow Dash with? Who's going to do the research
who's
on
gonna do
that?
that research?
Starlight Glimmer. That very little scene ship of Starlight Rainbow.
It'll be
Really?
Twilight again, and it'll lead to a polycule.
I can live with that.
Starbow. I can call it. Would that be the ship name?
Ooh. Yeah, Starbow.
Starbow could work, but I mean, come on, Trixie and Starlight. That's
Who's to say that Rainbow Dash can't be part of their polycule?
I-
Literally, as they're off on the road somewhere, she's going to find them.
Rainbow Dash is a part of everybody's polycule.
That is true.
Yep.
I
Everyone,
could,
including the kitchen sink.
everyone wants a little
That
dash.
pick at some point.
Dash, what are you doing with that kitchen sink? Do not harass my love.
Oh my!
Oh god.
Right. Back on
Yeah,
track.
she
Call it.
ducks.
Wait. The fic would be a dash of romance.
Oh, I like that.
Oh,
Hey,
right.
there it is.
Right.
Write that down.
I'm going to get my moderator hat back on. Back on the discussion. Right.
Concern it.
Impressions of the prose style. How does this story read? Is it trying to achieve any particular tone? And if so, how well does it achieve this? I'm going to start with Cerridwen because she picked it. And then I'm going to loop back around and do things in a bit more of a different order than always going down alphabetically. So, Cerridwen?
The curse of being C.
Well, the curse of being the Fic Picker, to be fair.
Yeah, that too. Well, it's read from a third perspective, but it's mostly read from Applejack's point of view. So I read it as like it reads it as sort of a suspicious tone.
Yeah, I suppose. It is third person limited from Applejack, so it is going to have a bit more of her personality in it. Do you reckon it's accurate? Does it sound like her? Apart from the bit that is from Twilight's point of view later on.
Well, I'd say, I think she does. She's very, how would I say it? She's very perceptive. And she does pick up on things, but she doesn't immediately say things out loud. And I just wonder if Applejack from the show would be more blunt.
Well, that very much depends on which season you're talking about and who's writing her. Because there are some points where she's incredibly blunt to the point of, wow, that is slanderized as fuck, but we won't go there.
Because she would, like, wouldn't she be like, at Twilight, are you okay? Are you, what?
Yeah, I reckon she probably would have asked a few more questions. Wooten, what do you reckon about the prose style?
Cerridwen honestly hit all my points there. I feel like, it reads well for the perspective that it's coming from. I feel like AJ would probably grill Twilight a bit more to, like,
agreed.
Pretty early on about like what's going on here. Why are you doing this? What's all this? What's all this then? And
what's all this then?
What's all this then?
Hello.
So on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with you. It very much feels like Applejack, but also like a really oddly restrained version of Applejack. I don't know.
Almost like someone drugged her a little bit.
A little bit,
yeah.
Which is getting it. Okay, clever. Go on.
Yeah, she was very quick to agree to this whole thing.
Yeah, and you can put some of it down too. Sleep deprivation, lack of sleep. But yeah, it's just I feel like she would have asked a few more questions of, do you not need to like measure something before we start?
Right.
Because she does figure out like, oh, do you not need to measure my hips or something to see if there's been any difference from kicking these things on my physique? And Twilight acts like she's crazy, but I'm like, no, that would be part of it if this was real.
Exactly.
Which is why I was really surprised at the end when she said, no, that part is real. Well, you're a shit researcher then, and that doesn't seem very in character.
Exactly.
Hence why I put down that question.
And also, again, like, is this not just part of the fantasy that you're just happen to be given this perfect opportunity to sit there and ogle your best friend to, like, stare at her assets, and while under the legitimate pretense of research, where the research isn't exactly anything except sitting there watching her, like, what?
It did. The parameters of the study seemed a bit ill-defined.
Oh yes, very much. And then on top of it, there's like little to no resistance on behalf of the subject. Like it's a little confusing for her, but that's it. And even though you're displaying obvious signs of, like, you're sitting there, getting your rocks off watching her and getting all blushy and everything every second, but somehow it doesn't even cross her mind that this could be anything less than above board. Like, really?
There is one tiny grumble that she says to Twilight. She's like, can you take a step back, please?
Right, but it never in her, like, we're limited omniscient. We get into her headspace. Never does it occur to her until she's like reading the words that Twilight wrote. Like, this is fantasy. And I mean, yes, pastel horses that talk is fantastical. I get it. But from a romance perspective, this is utterly creepy.
Can you imagine if she had never, like, admitted to AJ about this study and was, like, just sneakily hiding behind some bushes, just staring at her butt?
Like, it's I mean, that is obviously that would make it completely, like, there'd be no debate at that point. Like, she would be, committing crime essentially. But by having her permission, I mean, that is a big distinction. But still, the behavior is, I don't know, that's what makes it a fantasy, right? She's basically getting to ogle her with her full permission, under a noble cause. Like, that's why I say it's like an incel fantasy. And then at the end, like, not only is she allowed to do all this, but Applejack indicates that it's still, there's a possibility that there could be some feelings returned, maybe. And it's like, really? I don't know. Like, it's not that I don't ship Twijack. Like, I think they're a cute couple, but it's just the way that this all happens. Like, you have all those like funny stories about how people started dating. This would be one I would keep under my hat.
Midnight?
I think this falls under a rule. Just to reply to Clever, have you ever heard of the theory name's gone on my head. It's from How I Met Your Mother. Either it's creepy or it's romantic. And it all depends on how the other person perceives it.
Yeah.
Which
I didn't know it from that show, but I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like, if you're cute, it's okay. But if you're ugly, it's creepy.
No.
That's not what she's saying.
I know, but
it's
that's been
about
done before.
perception.
It's like Edwards and Bella from Twilight. Oh, he was watching me while I slept. That's really cute.
Yeah, it's how you take it. Like, if it's something that rings your bell, it's cute. If it's something that makes you really weirded out, it's creepy. But it would be the exact same action, it's just how it's received.
Exactly. And I would put this under more the cute factor, but I do get where you're coming from. It is a bit creepy, though I would argue she does actually state that, yes, the thing, she's supposed to be looking at her butt, but she even writes that she's not just staring at her ass all day, she's looking at the magnificence that is Applejack, just all her overall.
Her
But-
hair flowing.
Her sweat glistening in the sunlight.
Yeah, that makes it better, huh?
It doesn't make it better, but it does. It does mean that she's not just interested in her ass.
I mean, if you
She
ask a
does-
couple of artists, they'd tell you the sweat does make it better.
It does make it better.
I will say that I did like that the author noted that they do just go off, and by the afternoon there's been 4 hours where they're just chatting with each other, and Twilight's like, I forgot to make any notes because we were just having a lovely conversation. And I kind of wish that they'd elaborated more on that bit, because it would have made the first bit seem less creepy.
Right. Well,
True.
but then the title wouldn't necessarily be all about the butts. It's a flankology. See, I'm gonna, when everyone else have their say, I'm gonna say something about, like, the major theme of the butts. Go on, Midnight.
I thought it was cute. I thought it was nice. Maybe it's... I mean... I traveled over to meet a man that I had never... that I'd only talked on the internet. That could count as creepy and very bad. And for everyone else, do not do this. This was a bad idea. I completely would never let my kids do this. But... It turned out good in the end, and it was really sweet, and it was...
It was sweet in context, because it did turn out that he's your soulmate, but if he hadn't...
Exactly. So, sometimes the starts of relationships do start off a little creepy. But only to outsiders. To the insiders, it actually might turn out sweetie.
In the
Maybe.
wise
I don't know.
words of Birdie from Conker's Bad Fur Day, context sensitive.
Exactly,
Yeah,
Mondo.
you're speaking also as somebody who travelled for their significant other there, Midori.
I mean, yeah, I tried to do it with a couple of previous partners, but like the creepy factor came in, like they weren't up for it. Then one of them felt the need for me to come visit them because they didn't feel comfortable, like, moving in together, like, without us getting to know each other first. So, of course, I had to, like, come out and fly out and visit them a couple of times first. And then once we established that we knew each other well enough, we were comfortable enough with each other, I moved in with that person. After 4 years of dating them, things didn't work out, but we ended on very peaceful terms, so that was nice. And then when it came to my current partner, Gumi, like, I wanted to just rush out there because I'd known him for 10 years anyways, but everybody's just like, oh, but you've never met him in person. Oh, you need to fly out there and meet him and get to know the real him. It's like, voice and video talks with him over the course of 10 years wasn't enough. And then a whole bunch of shit went wrong. It couldn't possibly happen, especially with the finances that I had. And after a year, I was just like, no, fuck all of you. I am moving up there. I am getting out of this shitty-ass life that you're all trying to keep me in. And literally several of my friends funded the trip, and I made it up here, and we've never been happier. Fuck everyone. I found my soulmate.
Yeah, that is very much a drop the mic moment.
Yes, drop the mic.
Yep.
But I want to add on, I don't see anything creepy about any of those stories.
That's because the perception of the recipient worked out. If Applejack had been not recipient to Twilight in this story would have felt very different. It's only because of that minor reciprocation at the end.
Just that, like, minor difference could have, like, changed this into a very different tone of a story.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, again,
Honestly, I think it would have been a more interesting portrayal, personally.
Yeah. There was another story I did years and years and years ago, and I can't remember what it's called, but it was about Twilight and Applejack. Twilight wants to confess to Applejack, and they want to go on this love boat ride. And the whole idea is that if you go on this love boat ride, I think it's this tree will tell you whether or not you're a good match with this person. And Twilight's desperate to go on this with Applejack, and Applejack has been on the ride before with someone else, and it didn't work out. So she doesn't want to do it with Twilight, and she has to accept that Applejack's just not interested in her that way. And the fic is about sometimes crushes don't work out, no matter how strong they feel to you. And it's one of my favourite stories, but I can't fucking remember what it's called. Midori, did you want to say anything about the tone of this story before I go on to move on?
I felt like the tone maintained a somewhat comedic tone that it was going for. I mean, you tell me that something is supposed to be comedic, and I will approach it with comedy glasses and try to interpret it that way. So, like, I did feel the comedic vibes that they were going with the whole thing. Sure, there were moments that were awkward, and now that you guys mention it, like, having a little bit more of their conversations with each other between the flank staring would have added a little bit more to their bond that they were developing. And yeah, like, doing that instead of, like, very detailed explanations of, like, them staring at her rear end or how she was feeling being watched and whatnot. Like, those vibes are important to the overall story, and I do applaud them for being descriptive in that regard. But yeah, I do feel that the tone could have been aided by having a little bit more of that slice of life conversation vibe.
I've got to admit, the tone of this for me, I might be in the minority on this one, but I didn't realise the pun I'm doing there. Oh wow. For me, it wasn't enough. Whatever it was trying to do, it didn't commit enough. And that was the major impression. And I got this the first time I read it, and I really enjoyed this story. Like, don't get me wrong, I do love it. However, when I was looking at it from more of a critical point of view, I was thinking, this should have gone more, or it just should have been more. if it was going to be a saucy comedy, the sauciness should have been more. If it's going to be a comedy, it should have been more comedic. If it was going to be a romance, it should have been more romantic. And it kind of felt like it was little bits of each of these, but never fully any of them. And
when you say saucy, what if AJ was more in on it, and so she played up with that, and so she was
Exactly.
like wiggling her butt?
See,
Yeah.
I would have
Something
been
like
more
that,
into
yeah.
that. Yeah.
It just didn't feel like it committed to the bit enough. That considering it was a story all about Twilight staring at Applejack's arse, they didn't do enough with it.
I
It
feel
was,
also
it,
if
it
you're
was very
going
mild.
sorry to step on this, but if
No,
there's
go
going
on.
to be a bit of sauciness, I feel like if AJ were to do this, like if she knows about it, she could have been like just an absolute mischief maker.
Yeah.
And that would have been funny.
And you get
Like-
a little bit of that in the story, but it's such a little bit of it that it's
Yeah.
almost overlooked completely.
Exactly, and that's the kind of thing that it didn't annoy me at first, but on a re-listen to Cerridwen's reading, it struck me more of, this is a lot of words that didn't do enough with its own concept, and there was so much fun you could have had with this concept, and it was fine. But on a re-listen, it was less fine, and it was more, this could have been more. And I just feel like if you're going to take a concept like this, you need to commit to the bit.
I think this is the trouble is that they focused the humor more on cringe, on her socially awkwardness, and they focused more into that. Hence why we don't get the rest of what we wanted.
Kind of, yeah, you're right. Like, is this the 200th? Is it the 201st time that she's blushed today? Yep. But it's
There's
all based on the
also-
same joke, and it's all just, she looked, she blushed. We moved on.
Exactly. I copy, paste, repeat. And I just want to point out, for those of you who are like, well, Applejack wasn't really being all that dense. I mean, she's purposely dense. Like at the near the end, when she's actually reading the pages that she picks up that Twilight had dropped, like one of the phrases that she reads is, I, however, cannot seem to keep my heart rate down every time I so much as glance at her, and then struck out, perfect, adorable, ... her flank. Applejack stopped reading, and her eyelids narrowed in confusion. What the hey? She shook her head, certain she had read that wrong, and moved on to another page. She can't be that dense. Like, and everyone was like, oh, well, she was just waiting for proof. No, she's purposely written as incredibly dense in this fic, that this possibility, like, it has to like jump up and smack her in the ass before she realizes that, yes, it's that Twilight has a huge crush on her. And then she's like, well, I guess we're gonna have to talk.
Or it's the final confirmation of what she suspected. And she's like, oh, fuck.
Well, no, if she suspected it, then why would she say that she must have read that wrong? No, she's being portrayed as perfectly dense.
Well, that does segue quite nicely into the next point we've got, because I've swapped them around. Characterization. Do we feel it's accurate for each of these characters? So I'm going to start with Clever, because he's already started. Twilight and Applejack are the only two characters in this whole story. You've made it very clear you don't think Applejack's in character.
Well,
What about Twilight, then?
Well, it's Applejack is in character, except she's being mind controlled to be absolutely dense when it comes, like, she's completely blind to any of Twilight's, like, if you just somehow like cut that part of her brain out, she's still Applejack.
Well, what's the term that you've used before, Scribbler? Is it like Nigelification?
Flanderization.
Flanderization.
Like, but Twilight, I mean, I don't know, she's geeky. She gets flustered easily. I believe this is Twilight, except that I have to wonder with her and her general characterization, it strikes me as odd that she wouldn't have more of a plan about how this is going to go, and disappearing at the end while leaving a bunch of her papers seems a little odd to me. I mean, it's all for the plot. This is all about the plot. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with the characterization in terms of, is this Twilight? Can I believe it's Twilight? Is this Applejack? Can I believe it's Applejack? Absolutely. But I think there are some concessions made for the plot, specifically with Applejack, that make it tough to believe. And again, the ones that that are made for Twilight are, again, all for the plot. That's what I have to say about that. But
Midori, what do you reckon about the characterization of Twilight and Applejack?
Well, I do believe that they are in character, but I can see where one would feel that the two of them are portrayed as like two like a certain element of their character. But like, you don't know where this takes place in their relationship, and it is a fan fiction in the end. Like, what elements of their characterization that they want to emphasize on is their decision in the end. And honestly, I've had enough instances of seeing people that are perfectly intelligent and not super dense, just for some reason become real dense and oblivious over particular matters. So it's really hard for me to say that they are not in character just because Applejack is really dense. If anything, the writing of Applejack here, it feels like the status quo of how something would be written for a children's cartoon show, to be honest with you. Like, sure,
children's show that had people staring at butts all the time.
So you're saying our standards are too high?
I'm not saying that.
I think you definitely are.
I think that's what he is saying.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's a fan fiction, folks. It's a fan fiction about butts. It's about butts, people.
They let me touch their butts and touched my butts. Like, literally no offense meant by that at all. Like, you guys, it's perfectly reasonable as writers. Hell, I'm a writer. Like, it's perfectly reasonable as writers and story enjoyers for you to want a little bit more realism in how people are portrayed reacting to stuff like this. And it is something that can be improved upon, doesn't need to follow those status quo beats to be a good story. It can be a better story. So I do agree with you about that.
Wuten, what do you reckon about the characterization?
I suppose everyone's said it at this point. I do love that someone earlier mentioned flanderization.
You're welcome.
A lot, yeah, like, they are in character. You can't see it, but quotation marks, finger motions. But it's in character in terms of, like, if you're looking at a list of character traits that would describe Twilight and Applejack, and you just apply those character traits. It's written with very little insight into what their characters are. And we also have to take into account that this fic was written in 2015, so this was like season 4, season 5.
Season 4. This was written, if memory serves the timeline, this was written before Starlight Glimmer was introduced in season 5.
Right.
So this is around the sugar, what was it called? When they had the big transformation, the box thing. It was around that time period.
Yeah. Where
they're all finding the keys.
Yeah. Twilight Corn.
This was around the time of Lord Tyrek. Yeah.
Yes, that time period.
So yeah, this is we also have to take that into account, that there may have been interactions in later seasons that changed the dynamic and how we view this story compared to when it was written back like 9 years ago. So
Holy shit, it is 9 years. What the fuck? Time
yeah,
isn't real.
Yeah. Almost Flankology, yeah, like 9 years ago.
Fucking hell. Oof, I hadn't done the maths on that one. That one's just kind of floored me for a bit. Cerridwen, what do you reckon? Oh, sorry, Wuten.
I was just going to say, I remember reading this story back when it first came out.
Really?
And yeah, like I saw it show up and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And
Of course.
So it was very nice to see that this one, after all these years, is still in the zeitgeist of people's interest, you know.
Butts are forever.
But
Indeed.
Cerridwen, what do you reckon about the characterization of Twilight and Applejack? Because you had to act both of them out, so you had to make some very particular choices on tones of voice and things. So you've probably got more of an insight into this than the rest of us have.
I felt Twilight was very cringy with her behaviour towards Applejack. So I felt like her intelligence had gone down. But like everybody else said, this is like a pick and choose. When you're writing characters for your own story of characters from a well-beloved show, it is like pick and choose what you want. And that she's a little bit of a caricature of herself, I found.
Flanderized.
Yeah. I found Twilight cringy at times with her behaviour.
So are you agreeing with Applejack?
The internet's gone really slow.
Oh, no worries. The magic of editing will make everything seamless.
unlike a certain crack.
Oh, wow. You realise now I need to leave this in? Fuck's sake. Like, everything was going to be seamless until that joke made it, but I can't in good conscience leave that joke out.
I think it was so bad my mind just blipped it.
Or did it pucker?
Oh, for God's sake,
Ew! Shame! That's a dishonor. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your cow. Dishonor on your whole family.
How are
My
you
goodness.
out Wootening Wooten?
Goodness. I've been on my best behavior.
He
let me tell
has.
you.
I am
really
very
has.
proud. You, however, I'm ashamed of. You need to go into the corner, mister, wearing the dunce hat.
What?
Yes.
Oh.
Wooten, are you puppeting Clever behind the scenes?
Find out the clever is
That would
actually
be
It's like,
very-
I'm well
that would be a
behaved,
very
wiggles
mean
finger
thing
and makes
to
him
do.
say phallic things.
That would
Where-
be
He got
very
his hand up his
mean
butt?
too, wouldn't it?
I want to know where his hand is.
No.
See,
Just-
all
just-
of this would be believable, except we have all the evidence of the other times Clever's been in these podcasts. And Wooten wasn't
Does
here,
he
but
like
you can't
hand up
blame
his
him.
butt?
Who's to say I haven't been puppeting him this entire time for
Dun,
all
dun,
of his
dun.
appearances?
You know, I want to point out
You
that
thought it was Clever, but it was actually Wooten all along.
I want to point out that there is a fic that will eventually get published someday, a reading that will eventually get published someday, that has everyone blaming Wooten for my behavior. I just want to point that out.
Is that
This
Tall Son
is-
Mummy?
What, I have no idea what you're referring to.
I'm fucking in it. You can't say that. I was in that one.
And you're blaming Wooten as well.
Well, not anymore. Now I'm blaming you.
Oh.
Just it was me, Dio meme, but it's Wooten. It was
Yes.
me, Wooten.
Very fitting.
Right, I have completely lost track of who has and hasn't commented on the characterization.
I'm pretty sure we all did at this point.
Yeah.
Did Midnight, have you commented?
I haven't, but I don't think I can add anything else, I'm afraid.
Right, okay.
I like the characters. I think they're relatively in character. Are they a little bit denser? Sure, but then again, aren't we all sometimes? There have been times when I've been told, "How are you not seeing this?" So I'd say it's in characterly out of character, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, we'll go with that. That's a nice one to add that on.
We like it, so we'll let it slide.
Basically, yeah, isn't that the same way with a lot of things, though? Like, plot points and things, they become infinitely more acceptable if we like the story and the characters and the author and the writing style. Right.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because piggying off of that just briefly, I was I don't remember what I was saying this about or what I was writing this about, but it had something to do with the idea that there is a certain amount of currency that you give with an author. That's if you want to look at it from like an economic point of view, if you want to bring economics into it, that you as an author have to curry enough favor with your reader that, and you can do that through various means. You can do that through great character development, great story, great prose, but every time you do something that takes the reader out or pisses them off, you're pulling from all this goodwill that you've built up. And if you aren't giving enough to the reader isn't willing to allow you too many conceits, right? Whereas if you're giving enough in those areas, then the reader will allow certain conceits, even though they might not allow it in other stories, but that's because in those stories, not enough currency was built up with the reader. So there's sort of like this weird economic formula of, that if you've created really good characters and you've given them really good character development, maybe we can overlook the world that you've created that doesn't make logical sense for whatever reason, or maybe we can forgive the odd prose problem that comes up. But if you have too little for the reader, then we can't be very forgiving. So there. And that also can be used to explain why some people will like something, they don't need much to make them happy, and then other people are like, no, I need better return on my investment here. This isn't giving me enough.
As a writer, I completely understand this.
Well, do you want to elaborate on that one, Wuten? Do you want to give your thoughts?
Somewhat. So I've only recently gotten back into writing stories, and one of mine was that I'm working on is, the typical stuff that I work on is Anon in Equestria, human in Equestria type stuff. And
your name used to be Wuten AIE, didn't it?
It still is.
Oh, is it? Oh, right.
Yeah.
I just assumed that you dropped that bit because I never see it on the end of your name anymore.
It's for simplicity's sake, for a lot of my labeling stuff, it is still Wuten. But if you go to youtube.com/user/Wuten AIE, it'll take you to my channel. But but I recently got back into writing again, and one of the characteristics of this new story that I'm writing is that Anon is over 1,000 years old. Like, he found a way to immortality, and I had to come up with a believable way for that to happen. And if you don't have a grasp of that, of the universe that you're working in, and you don't have an understanding of where you're wanting to take that, it can very quickly pull people away from what you're trying to create. For mine, it was zebra alchemy. And with that, I had to look into, like, okay, zebra alchemy, who do I think of? Sakura. Who do I there's not a lot of information on her backstory outside of the comics, and I haven't read the comics, so that gives me something to research, and it gives me something to build up my own world building side of things on that front. And so you have to take all of that into account when you are building up these stories. And for this one in particular, the premise of Flankology, very simple, very straight to the point. You don't necessarily have a lot of goodwill to build up with your audience outside of maybe like writing it well. and then you go from there. But yeah, that's
And gratuitous butt shaking.
yeah, and gratuitous butt shaking. You know, fan service does have its
Yeah.
place and time. You know, especially back then when this was written. So
Yeah, true. Anybody else want to weigh in on this before we move forward? I'll take that as a no.
Bum bum bum.
bum.
We've kind of already touched on number 6. Is this actually a romance? So I'm going to skip over that one. Unless you want to have a point there, Clever.
I was just thinking about having touched on it.
The incel.
Oh my god, yeah, okay, right.
Okay, well,
I blame
all
you,
right.
Cerridwen, for picking this story.
Me?
Who else am I going to blame?
Well,
But
can,
Gotta blame
can we just
someone.
say that there has to be... Look at all that butt.
So many butts.
God. Is this actually a romance? Clever, go on. Is it actually a romance? You wanted to elaborate on this incel romance thing.
Well, okay. So I get that if everyone thinks that it's cute and it's acceptable, then it is romance. But if someone's not into it, it's not romance. But how is that different from being a fantasy from an incel-like point of view? Like,
Okay,
the answer might be that
hang on,
that
I'm
it's
going to
not.
interrupt
I
you
don't know.
there, just because, for the purposes of our audience, do you want to explain what an incel is in the broadest, simplest possible terms?
So it's a portmanteau of involuntary and celibate. So that's where we get incel from. So someone who's involuntarily celibate, meaning that they want to get out there and be in all kinds of sexual relationships, but they feel that for whatever reason, no one is reciprocating their advances, and ergo the involuntary part of it. The
There is
community...
this. Okay, the only thing I would add to that is that incel tends to be a very outward-facing idea. You're right, involuntarily celibate. The idea of wanting romantic or physical partnership and not getting it. But the thing that characterizes incel as opposed to just person unlucky in love is instead of reflecting upon oneself and saying, okay, if this keeps happening, maybe the problem's me. What characterizes incels, as far as I'm aware, is blaming everybody else for the problem. It's not my fault, it's them. Their standards are too high. They don't know what a good guy is. And it obviously there's more layers to it, and I am going to link a video in the description below to ContraPoint's video on incels, which I know is a few years out of date now, but still makes quite a good few good points on this. But it's this idea of the blaming of the external instead of the perception of the internal is what separates an incel from everybody else.
Or unlucky in love, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was going to sort of go on to say that, you know, not exactly those words, but, you know, that there seems to be a great tendency within this community to externalize the issue, you know, that they're involuntary. You know, obviously they're willing, but no one else is, and so it must be their issue, right? Whereas it's like, well, maybe there's more to it than that. And where I call this an incel fantasy, I'm not saying that necessarily Twilight here is an incel, but I could see someone potentially of that mindset reading this and, you know, seeing this as kind of like a fantasy, you know, that like, oh, you know, I have my crush, I get my opportunity to, like, you know, ogle them and what have you for a whole day legitimately, and then, you know, because I happen to leave behind, you know, these sheets of paper that make it completely obvious what my feelings are towards them, you know, that sparks the conversation. They come to me, I admit my feelings, and they don't push me away. You know, they leave room for that maybe this could develop into something. And in the end, we even get that Applejack's even kind of looking forward to having her butt stared at, which... I mean,
seeing some rosy cheeks.
Yeah, very cheeky, very cheeky. But I mean, first I want to say, you know, to the author and anyone who enjoyed this fic, you don't have to feel dirty or anything about liking it or thinking that it's cute, or because honestly, I don't think it was written with the intention that that's what it would be. I think that they just thought butts are cool, and wouldn't it be funny to ship Twijack and have her be like super nerdy and blushy, and Applejack just kind of being oblivious, so that this could carry forth through a fic, because this could have been over in like 2 paragraphs had they decided to communicate a bit better, but then there wouldn't be anything to write about, right? So I get all that, and I want to make it clear that I'm not against this fic, or that I really do think that this was like written for incels or anything of that nature. I think it's accidentally incel fantasy. And
if I might add real quick, I would also add that since it was written in 2015, incel as like a term and as like a culture wasn't nearly as well established or well discussed in the cultural zeitgeist as it is now.
Yeah, it really took off in because it was actually based on something that a woman said. I'm trying to remember. Bear with me. Oh, right, no, it's Alana something. She didn't want to use her full name. And it was 1997 when she first came up with the term as involuntarily celibate and made that portmanteau. And it was because previous to that, the phrase that the media had been using was lonely virgin. And she thought that that was particularly cruel. So she came up with involuntarily celibate instead. It did not start off as an insulting term. I'm trying to remember here. It was 2018. 2018 was when it started getting used by the mainstream media after Elliot Rodger went on his killing spree in 2018. And that's when it took up its place in the cultural zeitgeist, really. But it had existed for many, many years as a rather benign term. It is not benign anymore. So it was around in 2015, but certainly did not have the connotations that it does today.
I mean, there's also the female equivalent, which is is it a femcel?
I don't know. I don't actually know what the female equivalent of an incel is.
Or is
Lonely Cat Lady seems to be the one that people are leaning on right now.
Lonely
oh my
Cat Lady.
goodness. As if that's an insult.
Yeah, this whole thing about, if you're dead, your cats will eat you. I'll be dead. I won't care. Go to town, Mr. Mittens.
All my cats are named after spices.
I wanted to name a cat Chinese Five Spice. I really did. I thought that would have been a good name for a cat, but I was vetoed. Importantly,
this cat's name is Jamaican Me Crazy.
I've instead named all my cats after Marvel characters.
That was some crunchy
and
audio.
DC characters.
My cats have got human names, and that was not on purpose. One of them came to me with his name already, and he was named after the adventures of Milo and something that thing about a ginger cat and a pug. I can't remember. Otis and Milo, that was it. And the other one was originally called Stella, meaning star, and then I found out he was a boy and he became Stellan.
There you go.
True story, though. My parents' cat, who they, for years and years and years, refused to acknowledge was their cat because he was a feral cat that they let move in, he's literally called Pusscat, and that's what he responds to.
That's cute.
Yeah, I mean, we at first accidentally got Luna coming to us when we said little shit. Because
she was... no, that's far worse.
Come here, you little shit.
To be fair, we realized very quickly, and so she now only comes when we say Luna. But it was when we both had first owned a cat for first time. Well, no, he hadn't, but first time in the apartment with us. We realized we should not be saying that. But yeah, Luna is a little bit of a little shit at times. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
You have just reminded me of something that I have literally not thought of in years, but which when I was growing up, my mum worked as a childminder, so I was just always in the house. She never looked after anybody who was above 4 years old, so the house was just constantly full of kids. But there was a little girl, and I just remember this when you said about little shit. They kind of adopted a cat who was living on their street, feral as well, but the mum didn't like it. She didn't like the fact that the dad had let the cat move in. So she called it Satan. And it wasn't like, she thought the cat would leave again. So, oh no, it gets better. She's like, Satan, Satan's here again. Except that my mum used to take these kids to a playgroup that was held in a church. And suddenly Amy stood up one day and in the middle of a church just goes, I love Satan.
Oh my god.
They did end up renaming the cat to Santa.
Oh god! Oh no! It's
And
like
it's
that
like
story.
I haven't-
Same letters.
I
Same
haven't
letters.
thought about that
Just
story
move the
in
N.
years.
Just shift the N over.
But yeah, it was like, fucking hell, you just sparked a memory that's like decades old there.
You're very welcome.
my best
You're very
friend.
welcome.
She
You know, I
did.
got-
She refused to stop talking about how much she loved Satan because she loved this fucking cat.
Satan purrs in my ear at night.
Yeah,
I swear this was like Satan sleeps on my bed sometimes. He's like, oh, stop talking.
Sometimes Satan claws me.
Fucking Abigail Williams of this bitch.
I got a
I
quick
give
one.
Satan treats.
Go on, Midori.
One time, one of our cats. All our cats have fucking names, but like one of the cats like went under the crawl space under the patio that we can't get into, and like nobody could get the cat to come out. Like he was just under there all day, and everybody was getting worried about him. And then Uncle Jamie comes home from work, and it's just like we can't get them to come out from under there, and he just walks up to the patio and just goes, "Come on out of there, stupid!" And the cat immediately comes out and goes inside to get something to eat.
See, now, wouldn't that have been less funny in church? I love stupid.
Right.
So now he refers to all the cats as stupid, and they all seem responsive to it. How's it going, stupid? And just
That
hops up
works.
into his lap.
When I was little, I had a babysitter who was originally from China, and she had this cat named Charlie, and she used to fat shame Charlie all the time.
Oh,
And she took care of this cat, let's be clear, but she would fat shame it like she was like trying to like exercise some personal demons. I don't know. She'd always be like, "You fat cat, you Charlie fat cat, you come here, you eat your food, you eat all your food, Charlie fat cat." And I did not understand until I was older how insanely funny that was, because at the time I just felt bad for this poor cat getting called fat all the time.
But to be fair, the Chinese are very, very blunt and very honest with their feelings.
Yes, I found that out when I went to China. Oh boy. Clever goes to China, but maybe never again.
Aren't you a handsome chunk?
Oh, I got all kinds of things. I got compared to Buddha. I got called a couch potato. I got
Buddha's always happy.
yeah, that wasn't what they were comparing me to.
Yeah, I know what they're going for. Oh,
If I had a point about the whole incel thing, I don't know if I made it.
I think you did.
Did I?
Yeah, because it can come off that way. I'm going to continue to disagree with you, but I can see how it can be perceived that way.
Yeah,
that's the best I'm going to be able
like,
to give you is I can see where you're coming from. I just don't agree.
I don't. Think
it has
was
crumbs
written-
of it.
I don't think it was written with that in mind. Like, I want to make that clear. I just, there's a part of me that looks at this and goes, I could really see someone who's of the incel mindset latching on to this story and loving it because it fulfills certain fantasies of theirs. I just, because to me that it has a lot of elements of that, right? Where what would an incel fantasy be? Well, it would be that, you know, the object of their affection, they would be allowed to like do these things that would ordinarily be, you know, reserved for someone that was in a relationship with them, and that somehow sparked an actual relationship, you know, going forward. That was something that they actually wanted all along. It was something they wanted all along.
When you put it like that, it does come across really creepy.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it hits those points, you know, that I think would be very appealing to someone with a mindset like that. And
I agree.
If it was written in a very with a different tone, it would probably be a very
If they
different
played
kind
it-
of story.
If there wasn't
Well,
If they
comedy
played
in
it
it.
straight, yeah.
But if it was in a different tone, it wouldn't be appealing necessarily to someone with a mindset like that, because to them, this could be romance. And here we're saying that it can be romance, right? Like if it's somehow defensible as romance. And I'm not saying that it's not, that it's impossible for it to be romantic. Like I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that
It can be written better. Like as I said, it can be written a little bit better. It can expand on things more. You are valid in your viewpoint of the fiction.
What makes a successful comedy fanfic? And what makes an unsuccessful one? So I'm not asking here whether this was successful comedy or not, but I am asking, what does a successful comedy, written comedy, look like? And I'm going to ask Wuten first, because you are the purveyor of quite a lot of really well-made comedy fanfiction. So what do you reckon, in your experience, makes a good comedy fanfic, and what makes a bad one?
So you need to have my go-to for that is situational comedy and dialogue comedy. So you need to have characterization that can bounce off of each other. So, I will bring it back to this story. In this case, we have your sort of straight man, Applejack, with your
Bisexual.
anxious nerd, Twilight. Those are two very very classic character archetypes that can bounce off of each other very well in a comedy fanfic. Let's see. Yeah, that's sort of like my big points there is, and then situational comedy. In this case, you have Twilight having to, by bureaucracy justifications, voyeuristically look at Applejack's butt for science, and so you get that situational comedy out of that.
What do you think makes an unsuccessful one then? If that's what is required for success, what would make an unsuccessful situational comedy?
So in those aspects, it would be unsuccessful characterization of characters. So Twilight being the straight man and Applejack being the anxious one in this situation would be a very different fanfic compared to what it is.
Yeah, that would definitely be
currently
into the incel territory.
Yes, it would. It would definitely. It would definitely stray into that mindset. Let's see. For a situational comedy, it would be something like, God, it's very hard to think of bad situational comedy.
I have just effectively gone to you, be funny.
Yeah.
Do it.
God, it would be something like
a lot of misunderstandings.
Well, I mean, even misunderstandings can be played off as funny, but it would be like playing the situation straight for how it is. That'd be uncomfortable, which, if written well, can be its own form of comedy. But I think it basically just comes down to the skill of the author to be able to write these situations into whether or not it is good or bad.
So what you're saying is that you need the planting and the payoff. And if you play it straight, you've got the planting but not the payoff.
Exactly. You have the plant, but you don't have the payoff. You need the... It's kind of like... Actually, this is really good. In a horror book, you have the build-up, the tension, and everything, and then you have to think of how do you want it to pay off. You could do it like in the Saw movies, where it's like a strict, like a big, gory, violent payoff, or you could do something like
Hereditary.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do something like an Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's the master of planting and payoff. When
Oh,
you say
yeah.
that,
Well-
if you show a bomb under a seat and then the scene going on around it, you've just upped the tension because
Exactly.
your audience knows more
Yes,
than everybody else.
That is exactly what I was thinking of when I was going over that. Yeah.
He was a knobhead in real life, but he knew how to do really good tension.
I was going to say that reminds me of Sigmund Freud's idea of comedy, was that laughter allows people to sort of let off pent-up nervous energy, and that this process explains sort of why tabooed ideas and like sexual themes and jokes that broach, social and ethnic topics can amuse us. So when the punchline comes, the energy that you're expending to suppress inappropriate emotions, gets released as laughter.
Oh yeah.
Sort of the idea that, that you're building up, you're creating this tension, and then you allow it to release at that time.
Midori, what do you reckon then? What do you think makes a successful comedy and an unsuccessful one? Because you have written a lot of comedy things. You've made it quite clear in the past that you don't like grimdark, but you recognize a really good comedy when you see it.
Yeah, it's something that, can make me laugh or even just make me chuckle a little bit. And this story did make me chuckle lately a couple times, just like, yeah. But so,
Yeah.
not just that, like that's not comedy.
And that's comedy.
Not unless you're the butt of the joke, I guess.
So what do you reckon makes an unsuccessful comedy then, Midori?
What makes an unsuccessful comedy is when somebody, well, I don't know if this has anything to do with this fiction at all, but like when somebody makes a joke at somebody else's expense and it doesn't really land with anyone, when it has more negative impact on people than it does the
Punching
the
down.
humor that they were going for.
So like punching down, aiming at somebody who's already kind of marginalized and making fun.
That is one thing, but like if you make a joke and you think, haha, this joke is funny, I'm so funny, and then all the feedback that you get for it is like not even like misinterpretation, just people looking at it and being like, that's not funny. That, like, you think situations like that are funny? Like, that's horrible.
You just described my entire life experience as an autistic person.
I've been guilty
You
of that
just
myself.
gestured at all of me.
Well, what can I say? I too I very much definitely have undiagnosed autism, I can say. So, like, that's why it can be hard for me to know what works and what doesn't work. But I just have a tendency of, like, writing what I think is funny, and considering that most of my personality is built off of children's cartoons, and I myself am a living cartoon character, I have a tendency of getting away with it. Hell, when I write stuff, I've had people like find things that I write incredibly funny that I didn't even think were funny. It's just like, oh, I suppose that is something that people would find funny. Huh. Go me.
Literally, it's just occurred to me, and I've just put the picture in the Discord, that as I'm talking about, like, my entire life experience as an autistic person, and then I realise I've done this with the things I'm eating.
Oh
And
my
this was
god.
totally, like, not planned. I looked down and went, oh, shit.
The only thing that's missing is having them arranged from smallest to largest.
Yeah.
They
Like,
are.
I'm not able.
They are not, at least not in that picture.
That is
Yeah, not
cashews
in that
and
picture.
peanuts in between each other, and there's the largest cashew to the smallest cashew, and the largest peanut to the smallest peanut in a pattern.
Oh, see, now...
Oh my god.
I really thought that was something else when I saw that.
What did you think I put in the chat?
We went from butts to nuts.
I honestly thought that they were potato wedges at first, but yeah, like
No, they
I
are forest
thought they were
peas,
chicken
honey
nuggets.
and sea salt.
I thought it was
For those of you who don't know what's happened, Scribbler has shared a picture of what I assume to be right next to her and on her table. She's got a
Literally.
series of cashew nuts which with peanuts spaced in between each one.
Can you just put a picture of it just on the video when it comes out?
Yeah, and they're all,
Right.
it's all
Hilarious.
neatly organized, but it's diagonal to the pattern of whatever it is that she's got it resting on. I just want
That's
to
the
point that out.
tablecloth.
The
It is a
tablecloth.
wipeable tablecloth.
There you go. And just for those that can't see it, so we've literally gone from butts to nuts in this podcast.
Oh my god.
Very
But
fitting
yeah.
that it would be one that
I'm
I'm
sorry,
in.
Scribbler. I'm sorry. My mind. It's disgusting.
Yes, I've just had to put a picture of the packet they've come from so that people know what it is I'm eating. It's honey
The
and sea salt,
packet of
cashews, and
nuts.
peanuts.
God,
It is
that
a
looks
packet
so
of
good.
That actually does
It
look
does,
good.
honestly.
They are
Do you
so
want
nice.
nuts in your mouth?
Specifically,
says-
cashews and peanuts. That's the best.
Yeah, and they've got sea salt crystals and Scottish heather honey, and they are so nice.
Oh my fucking god, that's so good.
I must admit, these were narrators, and he couldn't fit them in his luggage because he got a load of other stuff that I'd given him to take back. So literally, I'm eating narrators' nuts.
Nice.
That
There
was
you
your
go.
plan all along, wasn't it?
That was her plan all along.
She got his
Okay.
nuts.
I'm
These
gonna have to
salty
one
nuts.
up your snack.
Oh,
I'm gonna
go
have to
on,
one up
go
your
on.
snack game. I've got Nutella biscuits. I'm gonna have to enjoy those right now because you are making me crave those nuts.
Yeah!
So, like now, I'm gonna have
Indulge.
to have these Nutella biscuits.
I'd like to
Yes.
also add for the people listening that this package that she's shared in handwriting underneath the main title, which says Forest Feast. In handwriting, it says Original Snack Explorers. But my brain, when it saw the word explorers, thought it read exploders. It was the original snack exploders. So I thought that these nuts
They're
were
exploding
exploding
nuts.
in Scribbler's mouth.
Oh my god, you are so much worse than Wooten.
Phrases that no one
Switch
thought
No.
we were going to
It's,
hear.
it's me puppeting him. Don't you know? That's
Oh
what
yes,
it
I
is.
forgot about that.
But it's to make me seem like the more well behaved individual.
This is like April verse is over.
Oh, is
So-
it?
Yeah, April
So-
verse is definitely over.
Oh.
Anyways, on the back on topic, to answer your question, what makes a successful comedy fanfic when it is actually funny, like when it's considered funny by the general audience more than it is considered like unfunny. Like it's as simple as that. It's another perspective kind of thing. It's a eye of beholder kind of thing.
Yeah, comedy is subjective as fuck. What is funny to one person is deeply offensive to somebody else. Or just not funny.
Yeah.
Cerridwen, what do you think? What makes a successful versus unsuccessful comedy for you?
I think I just said it a moment ago, but I think when it relates to people, when there are core points, if something is offensive to the point where you don't even understand that you're being offensive, it's just not funny. Yeah.
When it's uncomfortable. Like being expected to explain what comedy is on a podcast.
When you explain the joke, it's not funny. Yes.
Yes. But something's
Most
so
of the
impenetrable
time.
that you had to explain it.
I have a
Dad
story
jokes.
about that.
Go on, Claire.
God. Imagine if you actually, like, unironically, had someone that wrote a joke and then had a character in the story explain that joke.
Isn't that literally like Morpie's boyfriend, Briarwood, wasn't it? Fuck, I've forgotten his name. But wasn't his whole shtick explaining the jokes and why they weren't funny?
I thought he was just like a parody of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory.
I think he was just, yeah. But I do have a time where that actually happened, where I had to explain a joke, and it was very uncomfortable. But it's a good story. Can I tell it?
Yeah, come on.
Sure.
Okay. You can always edit it out if you know, to protect the guilty.
You are giving me far too much credit for how much I actually edit out of these things.
I'm just saying you can if you wish. It's dealing, if it's not
Permission
one thing,
noted.
it's your mother. Freud would like this. So it was Mother's Day, I want to point this out. It was Mother's Day. I'm setting the scene. It was Mother's Day, Sicily, 1894. No, but it was Mother's Day.
We love a Golden Girls reference.
Good. Sicily, 1894. We were at the restaurant, and I think you have to, maybe to set the scene a little bit without begrudging it, you have to understand that my mother at this point, now whether she actually is or isn't, she was being particularly narcissistic that day. Being in Canada and being that it was during the playoffs at that time for hockey playoffs, NHL, it was a Sunday, and the restaurant we were going to was nearly full. But that's because the restaurant we were going to had attached to it a bar. And what was full was the bar, not the restaurant. I actually worked at this particular restaurant, and from experience, I can tell you that Mother's Day brunch is what's busy. Mother's Day dinner is a ghost town. That's just the way it was. And so we were there for dinner. And I was feeling like crap that day. It would turn out that I had strep throat. And the only reason that I had shown up was that it was Mother's Day, and I knew that my mom was going to make a big deal about it. That was it. So I had trouble swallowing. I felt awful. It was just not a great deal, but I'm like, I'll do dinner. I'll do some time, and then I'll go back to my place. So she had made a whole bunch of statements regarding Mother's Day leading up to us getting to the restaurant. Whoa, look at this parking lot. It must be full because of Mother's Day. And I remember saying, no, they're here for the game, Mom. Once you see the inside of the restaurant, you'll see there's like no one in the restaurant for Mother's Day. Well, why would they have a game on Sunday, on Mother's Day? Like, now questioning why there would even be a hockey game. Now, if you're Canadian, that's a ridiculous statement. There could be hockey on Christmas. It wouldn't matter. People will be watching it. So we get into the restaurant. I decided to give her, her card that I got her. Now, I still remember the card. I don't remember cards I've gotten last week. I remember this card because of what ended up happening. So I gave her the card. She looked at it, and she read it. My dad read it. He started laughing, and she looked at me and, with half-lidded eyes said, I don't get it. Now, there's two possibilities at this point: that my mom honestly didn't get the card, or because she didn't find it funny, she chose to try and make the situation uncomfortable. But joke was on her. You can't make me feel uncomfortable. That's just part of my makeup. I make other people uncomfortable all the time, and I feel bad about it, but you can't really make me feel all that uncomfortable most of the time, at least not like that. And so I had to explain it to her. And so this was the card. And I explained it just like this. I said, okay. I said, so here, I said, you read the beginning, and it says, Mom, you were there for me when I skinned my knee. Mom, you were there for me when I was sick. Mom, you've been there for me. And it lists a whole bunch of times that you've been there for me, when all these unfortunate things have happening in my life. I said, and then you open it up, and it says, so I've come to the conclusion that you're a jinx. And I then explained, so you're expecting this to be a very lovey-dovey card talking about how wonderful you are. I said, but then instead you get revealed to you this opposite possible understanding, and the juxtaposition that creates elicits humor. And she just kind of looked at me, and my dad was laughing even harder now at the explanation of why it was funny. Yeah. That Mother's Day did not go very well. The rest of it didn't. It actually, if you can imagine that it got worse from there, it did. But the rest of that story is not so applicable.
From a mother's perspective, I can kind of understand.
Well, you have to understand, too, that it was funny. And second, that I always get my mom a funny card. And the reason that I do that is that it's not that I don't love my mother, but I find that a lot of the cards that express lovey-dovey sentiments take it too far. to compared to how I genuinely feel. And again, it's not that I don't love my mom.
They're really cheesy.
I absolutely love my mom, but when I give a card and it says things, I guess, and maybe this is the autism, or this is just the kind of human being I am. Like, I will not write, nor will I say, nor will I buy a card, that specifically states feelings that are overstated, because of this need for clear communication that I have. So yeah, I've looked at them, and they never really say how I feel, and it's like, no, I don't feel that way. Like, that's not how I feel. Like, I'm sure my mom would love it if I bought one of those cards, but it would be meaningless, because it's like, well, I don't actually feel quite like that. That's not quite exactly how I feel. Go ahead.
We should send you some British birthday cards, because some of them can be quite harsh, like "Happy birthday, you old fart."
Yeah.
Well, I don't go that far with her.
Oh, that is nothing compared to some of the stuff that comes out of British cards. When Narrator was here previously in a previous trip, he walked into the card section and just went, "You are horrific to each other." Yeah.
It is true. It is very true.
It is true. Yeah, the comedy insulting cards are the far outstrip the lovey-dovey ones, because I think most people, not everyone, obviously, some people are very sincere, I am not one of them, who would look at this and just go, "Yeah, that's schmaltzy rubbish, I do not take this seriously, are you taking the piss?" Whereas they'll see a comedy insulting card and just go, "Yeah, that fits, thank you very much for that." Like, they're more touched by being insulted than they are by being complimented, because they don't trust a compliment.
Well, yeah, if you're nice to someone, then you're obviously you obviously hate them. Whereas if you're taking the mickey out of them,
or you're trying to get something out of it.
Yes.
That cynical suspicion.
Well, and that shouldn't exist in family. Like, I could see that with people outside your family, but you shouldn't be that cynical about family.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I said shouldn't. I didn't say that wasn't the way that it was.
It bonds you more for some families.
Anyway, sorry, I kind of just interjected that long story, and it didn't end well that day. Yeah, that was a time I had to explain humor, and you'd think that would ruin it, but my dad thought it was even more funny after I explained it. And I think it's because my mother stubbornly refused to own up that there was humor there to be had. Oh, I know it's not my turn, so I'll wait for my turn, but I just want to put out there that I do have things to say about what makes comedy and what doesn't.
Well, would you like to go next?
I don't have to. I'm fine waiting my turn.
Very good. Did you have anything else to add?
I passed my turn.
There we go, Clever.
Okay. So what makes comedy, and the reason why I had something to say about this is that my daughter is struggling with this right now. She desperately wants to be funny, and she does not
What age range is your daughter in, for context? You don't have to give us an actual age, but like, what range are we talking?
So middle school, which for those of you who don't have middle school, encompasses from 4th year, grade 4 till 8th. So in that age range. And she's tried to figure this out before, like when she was still in elementary, and she's still trying to figure it out. And she's very earnest with it. Like, she's trying to come up with some kind of theoretical framework for what makes something funny. And she'll try and make up her own jokes, which I think is great that she's trying. But she doesn't quite get it. And it led me to a lot of internal thinking about, I don't even know how to explain this to you, sweetie, because understanding humor and what makes something funny is it starts off very undeclarative in terms of knowledge, right? Like, a lot of knowledge that you might have about a topic before you really start nailing things down with it is undeclarative. You have a very difficult time explaining it to someone else. And it's not until you've spent a lot of time trying to hammer it out that you can start parsing it down and declaring it. So what makes good comedy? the simple answer is what makes a majority of people laugh at a particular time. That would be the simple answer. But to get down into like what makes what makes a comedy, like if you're going to write a comedy and you're wanting to try and plan it, well, I think that there's a couple different routes that you can take if you're trying to write comedy, and in the end, you have to try and give it to other people to see if it works, because there is no one theory of comedy that stands out as being the theory of comedy. There's a lot of different things that could be going on. Like it used to be, historically speaking, it used to be this idea that you were punching down. That was a superiority and relief kind of idea. That people found humor and laughed at either earlier versions of themselves or the misfortunes of others and feeling superior. Like that goes back to Plato and Greek philosophers. That's what humor was, and that plays out in when you look at comedies that stem from that. Today we would look at them and be like, well, that's not terribly funny. Freud, I mentioned earlier, comes up with this idea that humor is this release of tension, that you're sort of being allowed to laugh at things that maybe culturally, that maybe you have anxiety about. And I feel that a lot of stand-up comedians try and tap into that idea, that they take what's topical and what's maybe uncomfortable, and they try and create an opportunity for us to laugh at it in a way that is somehow socially acceptable within the context of the lead up and the and the punchline. And I think that it's I think that that's some of the best humor that really makes me laugh out loud, is something that attaches to something that is in the zeitgeist, that's maybe creating anxiety for people, and then allowing them to somehow find a way to laugh at it, or provide a way to make it safe. And I find it also interesting that a lot of the things that comedians today will do in stand-up requires a lot more setup than it used to. And I think that that's an indication of how audiences today are a bit more sensitive than audiences previous, where some jokes that wouldn't have flown today could have flown before, or the same joke can still be told, but you have to somehow bring the audience into a space where they are allowed to laugh at it, that you've given them somehow some amount of permission to be able to do that. Jimmy Carr, I think, is fantastic at doing that. For those of you who don't know who he is, he's a British comedian who's very vulgar in a lot of the things that he'll bring up, and how he gets the audience into a headspace where that's the things that he talks about are on the surface just appalling, but you can really laugh at him and the things that he brings up. It's just the way that he introduces the concepts that he does.
Just proof that comedy is very subjective. I know of Jimmy Carr of old. I do not like him at all. I don't find him at all funny. Well, I literally do just watch him and go, I'm so uncomfortable right now.
Well, and that also is an important part of comedy, is understanding the zeitgeist of your audience. If you have no connection to the understandings of the social norms and the unwritten rules, then you can't purposely make comedy that flies in the face of those observations, or it becomes exceedingly difficult. And I think that that's where sometimes comedians who end up being who are autistic can sometimes excel because they spend a lot of time trying to understand these social norms because they find them mystifying at their inconsistency at times, and it's pointing out those inconsistencies that can be very funny. There's another concept it's called benign violation, where they're trying, more recent people are trying to take all of these previous ideas and trying to create some unified theory of funny, and because they realize that things like slapstick just don't fit in these other ideas of what's funny.
Doesn't stop me from adding it.
Right. And so their idea with benign violation is that they try to come up with this idea that this theory of incongruity, the idea that that a person can simultaneously recognize both that an ethical or social or physical norm has been violated, and that this violation is very carefully not so offensive that it's reprehensible or upsetting. So then finding that edge where you're finding that incongruity, where when you're violating it, it doesn't quite cross into offensive. But good comedy is always pushing that line, right? And comedians will talk about this. What I find extraordinary for me is comedy that manages to hold up over time. And something that was, funny when I was a kid and remains funny, I think is somehow fascinating, because I don't know how you manage to accomplish that under this idea of what, the comedy's somehow pushing boundaries or looking at things. So like, for instance, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective just came online on Netflix, in Netflix Canada, and it does not hold up. It is not nearly as funny as what it was when it first came out. I've
never actually watched it.
Oh, well.
I've seen some of the jokes in compilation videos, like the infamous Rhino.
I can definitely confirm the first Ace Ventura movie really doesn't hold up. I still think the sequel is pretty damn funny, but the original one really doesn't hold up, especially the other.
Can I ask something? Is that the one that has the infamous terrible anti-trans joke?
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Now I get what you mean.
I was about to say.
Yeah,
Right.
That's the only other clip I've seen, and it was in the context of somebody saying, "Yeah, this didn't work."
Well, at the time that it came out, it was no one very publicly
punching down. It was this idea of punching down. The further back you go in comedy, the easier it was for people to punch down in their humor and get away with it because the marginalized didn't have a voice. Whereas as we've gone further into the age of social media, there's a few more people willing to call you out and just go, "Yeah, that ain't funny."
And at the time, I admit I thought it was hilarious. And watching it actually quasi recently with the missus, we both agreed, this wasn't nearly as funny as I remember it. And it's not that the movie changed. Clearly it didn't. It's that our attitudes about certain things being funny changed. And there are other Jim Carrey movies that hold up better.
Can I just interrupt again? Sorry to say here
go
that
ahead.
In Britain there's a particularly egregious example of this. It's not an anti-trans joke, but it is an entire television program that ran for quite a few years, if memory serves, and it's called Love Thy Neighbour. Cerridwen, do you know which one I'm talking about on this midnight?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not sure.
The entire premise of this long-running comedy show was, what if a black family moved in next door? That's it. That's the entire joke.
Oh no!
And you can imagine 1970s Britain when punching down was the only. Oh, there were so many racist jokes. That was the #1 rated show for several years on British television. It was the most watched. It was the most highly accoladed. It was so highly regarded. When you look back, it's deeply uncomfortable. Because punching down back then, the style of humour involved, as a lot of humour does, because humour does involve like a degree of tragedy in it. It's being able to laugh at somebody's poor luck, or laugh at somebody's mistake, or some kind of farcical mishap. But punching down in that regard hasn't aged well. Literally. Like, I can't even repeat some of the jokes. Like, you'll see them in compilation shows and just be like, what the fuck? Because if you tried to play them on modern television, you'd have to bleep every single one of them because there's so many racial slurs that are the joke. But it's an example of how, like you said, Clever, the program hasn't changed. The program is exactly what it was when it was put out. But the society around it, the hegemony around it, and the perceptions of it have very much changed. And there will always be some people who don't move with the rest of society and still find things just exactly as funny as they did back then. But just as a society, I think we have moved on. And the punching down now isn't as easily and readily accepted as it was.
No. And some people would argue that better comedy is realizing that we're all degraded as humans, as opposed to a particular group, and that self-deprecating comedians tend to have better mileage out of their content, and I think to an extent that's true. Like one of my favorite comedians, who's passed, whose name escapes me at the moment, did a lot of stuff. You know, he was a big guy, he was overweight, and a lot of his shtick was about that. You know, his experiences as that.
It's not Fluffy Iglesias, is it?
No, although he's
phew.
hilarious too.
I know. I was like, oh, please don't let me be that I found out he's died here on a Pony podcast.
No, I'm trying to remember. His catchphrase was "nay nay," and he was a white guy from the States.
No, I don't know him.
Yeah, I'll come up with it later and I'll remember. But his whole shtick, he did one performance that got recorded in Montreal, and it still makes me laugh. And hearty laughs, probably because I'm overweight and I understand a lot of the. But he even says in his act, he's like, I don't like to talk about other people, you know, in my shows. You know, I'd rather talk about my experiences and things like that. And I thought that was very intelligent of him, because I think it makes him a bit more timeless in a fashion, and or even looking at Mr. Bean, like. There's a show that,
legend,
honestly,
absolute legend,
legend,
and
funny.
only 10 episodes ever made,
right?
And
like
it's all really, physical.
It's
it can be broadcast in any country because there's no language barrier.
Well, there's so little language that's in it. Like there's occasionally is a bit, but
yeah, true.
But most of it is you know, him having his own flaws, and you know, being in these certain situations that exploit, you know, those flaws for whatever reason. And he does have a personality, and he does have a lot of hubris, and he's an oddball in a lot of senses. But they construct these situations with precision to exploit all of that, so that he can defy convention and end up in these situations that are absolutely ridiculous, but the lead up and the punchline are sublime. So writing comedy with all those different ideas stuck in your head, I would say that to anyone that's trying to write a comedy, I wouldn't overthink it, even though it's quite easy to overthink. I think the easiest way to try and write comedy is to workshop it with others,
so that you get a sense of if something's landing, and B, if it's not, why. A lot of one of my favorite quotes is that you can pretend to be serious, but you can't pretend to be witty, and I think that's true. Comedy is hard.
Ooh, I like that. Comedy is fucking hard. And also, yes, I'm going to use that quote.
Yeah,
It's a very good
it's
quote.
easy. You can pretend to be serious, but you can't pretend to be, witty, and that's true. I it's not that I think you're born with it or you're not born with it. I think it's a skill like any other that you can develop. But I think if you go at it with an intellectual hammer or instrument set, I think you lose something in it, because there's something organic that has to come out of it. And with that, I would say that people who are trying to write comedy, what makes it good or not, I think that the best comedies that I see that are written comedies, that are stories, have elements of tapping into certain human experiences that are common to many people. If it's too specific, it's not going to be funny for a number of the readers. So
you mean like every time I look into fanfic readers chat, I see that Narrator and Wuten are exchanging gifs and comedy jokes about programming, and I'm just reading it like, I don't get it. So they're laughing themselves. He literally, while he was here, was giggling on the couch, showed me the joke, and I just went, don't even bother to explain it to me.
It's nerd comedy.
Yeah, so your audience, your
been there.
comedy lands if the audience is right.
Right, like there's
it becomes like an in joke.
Well, but that's again understanding the context and the zeitgeist of the community that you're hoping reads or is your audience, right? So someone who's doing stand up at a RuPaul show might not fare as well at the Republican convention. I mean, if they do, I mean, I want to see that act that manages to
skilled. That'd be a skilled comedian,
right?
Woo! Damn.
So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I mean, you usually you craft your comedy.
You'd have to be just purely physical comedy and no words.
I mean, Mr. Bean might kill it both. I have no idea.
I think you might have just found the one person. I don't know, I was going to say Pee Wee Herman, but maybe not.
Okay, I'm going to say it. I never really find Mr. Bean that funny.
It's alright. Comedy is subjective.
It is. But again, like that's part of that whole audience thing. And I think that if you're a good comedian, you will not be one noted. Because not every joke is going to land with everybody. And so you have to have a lot of different experiences that you're pulling from, and a lot of parts of, society and the human experience to really try and get something that manages to be funny for most people. And you have to, there might be some jokes that kill with everybody. They might just, do really well with a certain part of the population. There might be certain jokes that only are funny to bronies, but having a variety in it to if the goal is comedy is what I would say. What makes things not funny? I mean, good grief. There are so many things that make things not funny. And I mean, it could be timing, could be word choice, could be that they're trying too hard, that they're not trying hard enough, that they're like the things that I mean, it's easier to talk about what is comedy than what makes a bad comedy. And again, the biggest advice that I could give someone would be workshop it, share it with other people. Does it land? And if it's not landing, with people that you hang out with and respect, then maybe, it's maybe not hitting the audience that you're aiming towards, or if you're aiming for an audience that you don't respect, then that's who you should have, workshopping with you.
Yeah, when a rib goes too far to become a roast.
Yeah.
Well, let's follow that up with, there's only one rule I would really say about comedy other than it being subjective, and that is, when it comes to written comedy, don't just write it like a visual comedy. And I see so many authors doing that, and that's one of the things I did appreciate about this story, Flankology, that it doesn't describe things in a way that is just meant to be, right, I'm going to describe exactly what happens on a screen, but I'm going to describe it and it will hit exactly the same, and it won't. Because when you see something, there's a level of pacing that you get from visual comedy that you just don't get from written comedy, and you have to approach it differently. And I think that's if people take no other lesson from anything I say today regarding this story, it's that treat written comedy like it's written. Use the wording, play with puns, have interesting dialogue, use the situational comedy to your advantage, but don't just describe what you would like to see on a screen and expect it to hit the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
10 out of 10.
It's all in the timing for what is visual.
Exactly, and you can't rely on timing for what's written.
I mean, and even if you were to like read it out loud,
like you mean like Cerridwen did?
Yes, but I'm just thinking about the VTuber Absolute Unit. Some of the stories that they tell,
yeah.
I
had to think for a second who that was.
Mm-hmm.
I just about have urinated myself, like for real, because and a big part of that is timing, tone, timbre. Like you can't just, like, if someone was to like write that out and then read it on a page and expect to get the same reaction, I don't think it would be the same.
Yeah, exactly.
On that note, funnily enough, I actually was originally going to have them on as Anon in one of the fic readings that I was doing. But the timing just didn't work out at the time, unfortunately. So.
No, but you know them?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I messaged them years ago, back when they were DWK.
I know nothing of their history. Who's DWK?
DWK was an episode reviewer back in the pony fandom back in the day.
I didn't realize they're the same person.
They're the same person.
Fuck, I remember DWK.
Yep.
I did not know. Wow.
Absolute Unit is DWK from pony fandom years ago.
Holy fuck.
I don't know who DWK is, but now I'm more interested.
You should look up who DWK is. Stuff. I think you'd enjoy it.
I love their stuff.
Yeah.
Just every fucking episode just cracks a beer. Okay, here's how this shit went down.
It is. It's Absolute Unit, but doing ponies. That's basically what it is.
Basically, yeah. It's Absolute Unit, but with pony reviewing.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Not so much reviewing as much as just like explaining what's going on in his own twisted way.
So, yeah, you need to go look up DWK.
It's so good. I think
it's so good.
I will link in the doobly-doo.
Okay, Wuten, you gotta hook me up. I gotta get this individual to read at least one story for my channel.
I don't know if they would be willing to do it anymore, unfortunately. They've kind of
they've
moved on
left
from
their pony
pony,
stuff
unfortunately.
behind.
Well, yeah. I'm a fan. I'm fanboying right now because I love them, and anyway. Well, I'll make my own way. I will create a scenario where I have to do a study on Absolute Unit's voice for a scientific body, and I will just have to listen to them.
You will just stare at them the entire time.
Stare at them while they're recording the entire time.
There we go.
While blushing repeatedly and making notes. And it will not be creepy.
We do need to move on because we have been recording for over 2 hours and we're on 0.8.
Fine.
Right, okay. What makes Twijack the best ship?
Okay, what makes them the best ship is
Go
the
on,
fact
Midori.
that It's the nerd and the jock relationship. Like, look, I just literally yesterday finished catching up on the entire catalog of the nerd and jock comic.
Oh my
love
god,
it.
yes.
Nerd and
Yes.
jock is so amazing. Their friendship is outrageously beautiful, and I can very easily, just like all the people in the fucking comment section of that comic, see it as a romance. Like, it's a matter of like him me big smart, him me strong dumb. Like, it still falls in the opposite attract category. Like they work together. They work off of each other well, and they can improve each other well. Like,
It's also
Peanut
really
butter and
sweet.
jelly.
Like they're it's very genuinely sweet, their interactions. Like they are good friends, you know.
yeah, they are good friends.
Friends.
They're roommates.
Friends.
I think my head's gonna hurt tomorrow with how many times I facepalm today.
So
But,
Midori,
yeah.
it's the jock and the nerd dynamic.
Oh, yeah, hey, yes. Like, Applejack can easily help Twilight work towards being more physically fit, and Twilight can help Applejack with improving their understanding of certain academic features. And both of them, like, Applejack can be the streetwise individual that has some like really good life lessons for Twilight, especially since they have a tendency in the show of being the one that didn't learn anything. I was right all along. And Twilight can also just
Learn not to be
She
so
can be.
anxious.
They
Her
complement
exact-
each other. One's strengths is the other's weaknesses, and that's the
Exactly.
thing I've always loved about this shit. I didn't until I read for my channel. Frick. It was a Christmas story by Book Player, who also wrote Lost Time. And I can't remember what it's. The Homesteading. That was it. I read The Homesteading and was hooked because, yeah, they complement each other. Twilight becomes less anxious because she has a stolid person, Pony, backing her up and talking her down. But Applejack is brought out of her own very narrow work ethic and narrow life by Twilight. And I just love that about them, that they, each one's strengths props up the other's weaknesses, and each one's weaknesses is propped up by the other's strengths. And I love that.
I just want to add, Midori, you sound like you're really describing Rainbow Dash and Twilight more than Applejack and Twilight, in terms of the idea of the jock and the nerd.
I suppose it can be as well.
When I think
can be,
about
like,
when I think about like how Twilight introduces Applejack to books and reading and helps her study, whereas that kind of exchange seems more between those two, whereas what I really see with Twilight and Applejack is that Applejack is extremely grounded, and so for Twilight's anxiety, I feel like that aspect is what's really important in that dynamic. Like Applejack has her concerns and her worries, certainly, and it's very rare that she gets consumed by them. It does happen, but it's rare. She's much more of a grounding
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, and I agree. I agree exactly where you're going with this. Twilight needs 2 jock girlfriends.
Polycule!
Perfect. Polycule.
And so
Polly
it all
fixes
circles
everything.
back.
The running of the leaves.
What I was going to say,
Yes.
though, about what I do, I understand what Twilight sees in Applejack. That makes sense to me. If we see Twilight as essentially a person who's autistic, having an individual that is not only grounded but is committed to a very truthful interaction. Like, she never has to worry about whether what Applejack is saying is accurate, or if she's going to say something that she doesn't mean or anything like that. Like, there's going to be a lot of trust that's easy for Twilight to develop a very deep relationship with Applejack. What I fail to really get is what Applejack gets out of that relationship with Twilight. I'm not sure how she gets propped up by Twilight.
Well, I can tell you the way that I see it. I can't say to like other people because it's very interpretive when it comes to characterization. But the way that I always see it as, Applejack is a character who is very apt to get lost in her own head in a different way than Twilight is. They're both apt to get lost in their own head when it comes to their own thing. But the way that Twilight gets lost in her own head because she has a hyperfixation, which if you interpret her that way, that she is neurodivergent, I do, and hyperfixations are a fucking road, a sleeping policeman you constantly have to get over. But the way that Applejack gets lost in her head is that she feels weighted down with responsibility, that she is as someone who is wholly devoted to her family. And it can be the family themselves, the ponies. It can be the concept of family and upholding of family values. It can be the farm. It can be traditions. It can just be the way that she's always lived her life. And because of that, as somebody who grew up with a very, very insular family, my family was tiny. Applejack's is huge, but it's the same concept that when you grow up in a very insular environment that doesn't really allow for external voices, sometimes you do need someone who very gently is going to give you that little nudge to look beyond what is your norm and what is your very comfortable rut. And somebody who won't break in and smash in and break it to pieces and make you all in one go reevaluate your entire life, which is what, depending on how good the writer is, that could be what Rainbow Dash does, or that can be what Rarity does, or anything like that. But I prefer the idea that Twilight, because she has been learning more about social interactions and the softly approach, would very gently cajole Applejack out of that mindset and think, maybe we should go and do this today. Wouldn't you like to try this? And she wouldn't force something onto Applejack. She would encourage her to test out things that were outside of her comfort zone and try to introduce her to other things that she wouldn't just look at Applejack and think dumb farmer the way that a lot of people would. Because Applejack's not a stupid character. As much as she doesn't exactly act hugely intelligent in bits of this story, she's not a stupid character. But she is a character whose intelligence is channeled into things that aren't ordinarily thought of when you think of cleverness. And I think that as a character, she's so used to being sort of undervalued by those around her outside of her family, or at least thought of as not as intelligent, thought of as not as worldly. And I don't think Twilight would do that. I think that Twilight would want to find the pieces of Applejack that are purely Applejack, that aren't just defined by her family, and encourage those to grow. And that's what I like about this relationship.
Pulling from D&D terms, Applejack would be seen as very high wisdom, not quite intelligence.
Very perceptive.
I will 100% go with you on that because I don't know D&D, but I know that a lot of my audience does.
It's perceptiveness, it's insight. Wisdom is being intuitive to it's intuitive intelligence. It is being able to see things that someone like Twilight, who would be very high intellectual, like intelligence, would be blind to in that regard. Like, she's very high in book smarts. Applejack might be more into street smarts in that regard. I think that was mentioned earlier with street smarts versus book smarts.
Yeah.
I would counter a point that you brought up, just that that Applejack might feel perceived as a dumb farmer. I mean, the whole town had basically a yay Applejack.
Yeah, but they were having a yay Applejack's so reliable for everything we need from her, not a yay Applejack, she is so smart and unique and wonderful.
But I don't think that she would get the idea that she was looked down upon by
maybe
the
not by
general
the
citizens
people who know
of Ponyville.
Yeah, maybe, but that's what I'm thinking is more. It's not the people who know her. It's not those in her immediate vicinity. It's the general perception, because she is a celebrity in all terms of all of Equestria, and there's the ongoing joke of she's the background pony because everybody underestimates. That's the word I was looking for. Underestimates her. I blame the fact that we've been talking for 2 and a bit hours on why my intelligence has now dimmed far away from wisdom.
I would staunchly disagree, but fair enough. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's. I hear what you're saying, that she would be a gentle push. And when you have a stubborn personality, that might be the best touch, because sometimes just having 2 stubborn personalities just creates conflict. So I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to imagine, them as a couple kind of long term, and I don't know. The question is why are they, the best fic or best ship?
I
right?
was being slightly hyperbolic there. Like, they're my favorite ship. That doesn't make them objectively the best.
I think.
Okay, all right.
Isn't there an episode talking about like bringing things out of Applejack, just thinking for herself and not just being symbolized by her family and her responsibility? But isn't there an episode where Rarity tries to pull out her individuality and her femininity by trying to say, "Hey, do you want to go to the spa with me?" It's like their weekly thing.
Yes.
But she can't do it. She just gets into a rut. She's like, "No, I got to go feed the pigs. I got to go. Okay. No, you are coming with me to the frickin' spa, and we are going to relax." And she can't do it, even in the spa. And it's really sad. And Rarity is trying her best to be with her friend. It's really sad. So I would, I love the Twijack, but I also like the Rarajack, because I think Rarity has that aspect as well. Just like, come on, and just be you. Just take some girl time for you, and just hang with me.
Clearly, they should all just be like the multi-ship, the omni-ship. That's it, where all the main 6 are together in one big ship.
The Spice Girl
Just
ship.
have a herd.
Yes. I think a lot of it comes down to like the quality of writing. If you've got an author who can make me believe the most crackiest of ships, as long as everybody's consenting and everybody's of age, I think anybody can write like a really good ship. It just so happens I really like Twijack. In retrospect, now I look at it, it might be because I am kind of Twijack in and of myself, that I am incredibly neurotic and high-functioning autism like Twilight, but I'm also come from a very insular family background and don't get out of my little work rut very much like Applejack. So maybe that's why I like that ship.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong
Wrong
with
at
that.
all.
Oh.
Right, anybody got anything to add to this one before we move on?
Does anybody ever ship Pinky with Applejack?
Lots of people do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of people do.
Because I haven't read any stories on that one, and I think that'd be an interesting ship.
I think a lot of people started shipping it either more or less after it was revealed that they might be related. So depending on like who was interested in that kind of thing.
If it's a Twilight Pinkie Pie relationship, no. Do they call it Twinkie?
They call it Twi-Pie, but they've just missed a trick by not calling it Twinkie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just interested now. So, what are people's like favorite ships of the moment? I know they change, but like, what ships do people actually enjoy? Because I've clearly showed my hand very much and said Twijack and Appledash are my favorites. What about other people?
Anon X everyone. Anyone and everyone. There's a reason it's filled to the brim on my channel and on the stuff
that I write. It's, I'm a one-trick pony.
Oh
but
my
that
gosh.
pony, that trick is a very, very, very sharpened edge. It's a very good trick.
I used to watch. Does anybody know the artist Assassin Monkey?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I've literally got 2 of his posters up in my office.
Yeah, so I didn't, for the longest time, I don't read enough fan fiction, but I was spoiled by his perspective of the Rarajack, and I was like, oh, it's so adorable.
That's like Rarajack Daily with white diamonds.
I find myself very interested in stories that explore romance with
either Celestia or Luna, mostly because I feel that exploring those relationships uncovers what could potentially be very juicy character development and world building.
God, clever. I need to send you the fic that I've been writing.
Oh, well, yeah.
The one that I mentioned earlier. I'll send it to you. I think you're gonna chew into it, and you're gonna be like,
Well,
what the fuck?
Go ahead, send it. I love it, and in return, I might send you something I'm working on. Haha.
Oh, hell yeah.
But yeah, I really like reading those stories. Not necessarily with any particular pony, or even if they've got a good OC going, because I feel like there is a lot of undiscussed and unpreviously revealed trauma that those two would have to confront in the face of a romantic relationship. And I think that so like Chrysalis and Celestia fics are fascinating to me, in how they manage to like bring certain things up, and some of them are very well written. I haven't seen a lot done with Luna. There's one that I'm reading that's occasionally sort of flirts with the idea of Luna, seeking a bit of romance. Go ahead.
Talking about Luna, that was another artist that I used to watch. There's Silpho. She had like written like little comics or little sketches of Twilight and Luna. I think it was on a spaceship.
This sounds very interesting, but I've never heard of it before.
Oh.
If I find it, I'll share it.
Well, the artist I always used to follow for my ship stuff was Jowie Bean, because he was a big Twijack shipper.
So
I'm so sorry for plugging my thing again, but it literally is Anon and Luna. So I literally just sent it to you.
I have read one Anon and Luna one before, and it was actually Anon with Nightmare Moon specifically, and that was fascinating in and of itself.
The only Anon Luna I've ever seen was how Luna got her groove back, which was on Narrator's channel, and YouTube took it down.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah.
Rip.
Yeah, and it's not a sex fic, but it's saucy enough that I'm not sure I'm comfortable telling you what it was about. If you don't already know.
Well, anyway, that's why I like those fics. Not so much because of that there's a particular pairing that I like. I just like reading the stories that explore their psyches, because I find, my favorite. I make no bones about it. Luna's my favorite. Period. I think she's the most she's best pony. Period. Come at me, bro. But I do enjoy reading stuff that gets into her thinking about romance, and Celestia.
It is very interesting to get into the mindset for writing for Luna, because you have everything that surrounded her past, and she's only recently returned from that. So literally in the time of the show, you've got like 10 years roughly to work from that, depending on when you're writing it from. Like if you're writing it from the perspective of the Nightmare Night episode, that's literally like a year after her returning.
She's returned.
Yeah, so there's that wound, that mental wound, that physical wound for that matter, is so fresh that it's very it gives a lot that you can pull from in terms of characterization, in terms of her reacting to things that are said and done, etc.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Clever, you now get to explain what the hell this point is.
It was just a bad pun.
When exactly does the plot thicken?
Exactly. There was no thickening of this plot. It was as thick as it was ever going to be from start to finish.
Was it, in fact, apple thick?
Apple thick. It was apple thick.
Did it have 2 or 3 C's at the end of it?
Why not 4? Why not 5?
Did it have those apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur?
It's funny that you mentioned that. Narrator and I have our own little side character who sometimes does cameos in my audio dramas called Applebottom.
Yep.
She is the missing Apple cousin who, in fact, runs a brothel in Appaloosa.
I love it.
And she has. You've seen the art. I'll put it in the chat. That literally the artists of Friendship is Tragic took that character and just kind of adopted her. We'd made her as a joke, like just a silly thing on a call one day. I posted her in the server when they were looking for background characters and was like, oh, could you put her in? It will be a little side joke because we're the only ones who know that actually she's like the local madam. They created an alternative main six to go along with her who all work in the brothel.
Oh my god.
I will
my
put
God.
that in the just to
I love
show
it.
you. I love
It's-
them. I love them
it's pretty
so
fantastic.
much. Yeah, they came up with them all on their own and just gave them to me afterwards. It's like, oh my god, you made me my own little harem. I'm putting it. I'll put them in.
So yeah, if I had a question, to be answered there, I don't know if it was a complaint or a point, and of course it was a pun, but just that, before we start talking about how this is really slice of life, that's when that question was sort of answered. Is that there, as far as like a romance goes, it doesn't really hit like a romance, and the plot is very simple. And there's again nothing wrong with that, but I think thinking of it as a slice of life helps fix that idea of expectation versus reality, if that makes any sense to anybody else outside my head. Or stay silent on it, that's fine too.
I was posting pony bums.
Of course.
I was trying to find
I
Tuna.
love her.
That is the most appropriate thing to do during this podcast.
Well, this is Applebottom.
Freckles.
And people kept making art of her that got steadily raunchier.
I love it.
And then a few weeks later, they gave me these.
I love it.
Apple bottom jeans, the boots with the fur.
So we've got, instead of Pinkie Pie, we've got Creamy Pie.
Oh no.
Instead of Rainbow Dash, we've got Dominatrix Dash. Because remember, they all work in a brothel, so they all have their own special place. Instead of Twilight Sparkle, we have One Night Sparkle.
Oh no.
And instead of Rarity, we have Pillow Princess, who
Oh, I love
who also is our resident plus size character.
I noticed that and I love them. Oh, I want to cuddle the Pillow Princess.
And instead of Fluttershy, we have Tendershy. And instead of Spike, we have an older character called Spin.
Very nice. Very nice.
So, yeah. Creamy Pie just makes me laugh all the time.
This is even worse, but I'm eating apple pie right now.
Sure you are. Sure
I
you
actually
are.
I love the
You
fact
know what
that,
that apple pie could use? Some cream.
well, look at her markings. Like, she's a piebald pony, so she has different white patches on her. But where the fuck is the white patch?
Right?
It's so well designed. They
It's
did
so well
so
done.
well. And it was a complete surprise. It was a set of gifts, and I loved them.
It's either the cream or it's the
Aw.
muff.
Exactly. And One Night
Why
Sparkle,
not
just
both?
yeah.
One Night Sparkle. Honestly, I do love that shade of fur and hair and everything. Like, they have an amazing design.
It's so I love them. I love them all so much. They are my babies. And they do not they don't get posted in a lot of servers because it involves a lot of explaining about where the hell they came from. But yeah, Applebottom started as a silly joke, and now there's a whole set of them.
Someone should order them in crochet.
Does anybody need a bathroom break before we go on to the last little bit?
Yeah, just a quick pee.
Because it's been an hour and a half since our last bathroom break. We've been talking for 2.5 hours. We will need to go through the rest of this because it's 9 o'clock at night.
I knew the moment that you said it's going to be a short.
I honestly thought it would be because
Uh-huh.
it's a silly romantic comedy about Twilight staring at Applejack's bum. How the fuck are we 2.5 hours into this bitch?
Comedy!
Well, no offense meant. like I am not throwing shade with this statement.
Throw all the shade you want.
But I would like to point out that on the topic of what makes a successful comedy fanfic, at least one of us spent a good 20 to 30 minutes explaining the finer points about like their feelings on that topic, and mixed in there, ironically, was don't overthink it.
Yeah, a complete essay.
It was clever all along.
What makes it funny? What is funny?
Well, when
What is funny? And let me bring in my middle school, was it daughter or niece?
daughter.
My daughter.
My middle school daughter to help me explain the finer points of this topic.
And my Mother's Day card.
Let me take out these
And
graphs.
to be fair, every time Clever's made a point, we've kind of gone off at a tangent. Like, Cerridwen and I started talking about British birthday cards. And then
Yeah,
I've just
that
brought
is-
up my
that's all.
That
entire...
is true.
Yeah, and I've just spent a good, 5-10 minutes talking about my little harem of, all ponies.
So it's all Clever's
Your
fault
burlesque
then.
club.
Yes, my
It
little...
was
Oh, I like that
clever
phrase.
all along.
My little burlesque pony club. But yes,
I
so
love
we-
the Burlesque Pony Club. I love them.
Yeah, they're my babies.
They're so
are so
cute. And their frilly lingerie is so cute.
Yeah. I do love them. Applebottom, I love that she's got freckles and that she's basically just distaff Big Mac.
I do love Applebottom. I love her freckles. I love her.
Bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peaches.
Her assets.
Ample.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, you missed out
She's
one.
well named.
Peaches and cream.
Did I?
No, that could be another one you could make.
Oh,
I don't-
right. Well, I've just said everybody can have an alternate version of themselves who works in the Appaloosa whorehouse. The best little
Peaches and cream.
whorehouse in
Why
Equestria.
not?
Peaches and cream, that can be Applebottom's girlfriend.
Oh, we did say that one of the things about them all is that they do therapy via sex. People get what they need from here, and they end up leaving knowing more about friendship and themselves, and also very, very empty.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
You can charge a lot for service like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know
you
the
could.
American healthcare system does.
Therapy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Are we all back?
Right,
Did we leave?
hang on. Give me
I thought
2
some-
minutes.
Right, I thought people went to use the bathroom.
I don't know.
You know, by the time we're finished with this podcast, I'm going to immediately need to go downstairs and marinate the steaks for dinner.
Oh, wow, okay. I'm literally just going to go and get a paracetamol because I have managed to talk so much I've given myself a headache. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Oh my.
Oh my.
I guess I'll take a quick wee while everybody's taking a while.
And I'll just remain.
Ditto.
Well, apparently the cause and root of all things, with Wuten with his hand puppeting me.
You're
Yep.
fine. It's all in good fun.
Uh-huh. Nothing to see here.
Though I am glad I didn't get asked about comedy because I know nothing about comedy. I was a shy girl in school, and so it's only been in recent years that I've tried to make jokes, and about 90% of them do not land. Because of course, I am like Scribbler. Some of my what I would think were jokes turn out to be a little bit too mean, depending on my audience.
I think I just walked back into being called mean.
Nope.
No. Just that the British humour is mean, and I never
Oh.
learnt where the line was, and sometimes my jokes turn to be more mean than anything else because as a kid, I grew up not making any jokes, and now I try to make jokes, and they don't land ever. Well, 90% of the time.
Yeah, you just reminded me why I don't listen back to the really early podcasts that I did with the heroic crew. Because, yeah, I didn't know what the line was either. And some of them came out as outright cruel, and I do not enjoy that I used to do that. I think I said last time that, I like to think we've become kinder as a podcast, and I'm largely talking about myself there. I hope I've become a nicer person.
Well, as long as I've known you, you've always been exceedingly nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll also jump in on that midnight comment. I built up my understanding because I started out in this fandom from /MLP. So it took. I say for a reason that when I first started out, I was forged in the fires of 4chan, both as an in-joke and also because essentially it was true.
Wasn't your cutie mark originally an in-joke from that as well?
Yes, still is.
The Rainbow Dash meatball. Am I right in remembering that?
It was that whenever I would write my my original fic, I would like slip in these quote unquote spaghetti endings where something awkward socially would happen, and then someone would drop spaghetti, or the town would flood with spaghetti, or something akin to that would happen, and that's. I got the name King of Spaghetti from that, and when I made my little OC, it I was like, let me just get a little clip art thing and edit it a little bit and make a little spaghetti.
My first encounter with that kind of thing was when it had already morphed into a horror thing that somebody had animated you dangling from the ceiling.
Oh yeah.
And then it just became this ongoing thing. I was like, okay, I guess he has like spaghetti noodles that randomly sprout out of his back. And for ages, I literally thought that you were like some venom thing.
I've never defined how those noodles show up or where they come from. Only that they're there.
Somehow that makes it both funny and terrifying.
Spagender Man.
Oh my god!
Yes,
Midori.
very.
Right, we all back?
Yeah.
Okay. So, carrying on then. Cerridwen, this is your point. If Twilight's feelings for Applejack were removed from the study, would this still be biased? How could she may have made this a fairer study for the EDA? Would she have been truly comfortable studying multiple farm ponies using proper scientific tests? Cerridwen?
Yeah, because I mean, we were talking about like how Applejack was going. Where I mean, you said earlier, what do you want to measure my flank before and after I eat or something? Before I go bucking trees? Do you want to compare my weight before and after? Do you want to maybe have a non-farming pony do farm work for maybe a day or two and compare results? It feels very biased having just a one person to look at.
So Applejack was more scientific than the science pony.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
As someone who was very much into statistical analysis back when I was in college, yes, it would still be biased, even without Twilight's feelings. You would want to. One, it literally it has to be someone that you don't know that consents to all of this. Making the assumption that everyone is a consenting adult in this regard, and they agree to this, and you're not just being voyeuristic for voyeuristic purposes. Yes, it has to be someone that you don't know. It has to be a random pool of applicants and random pool of test subjects in this regard. She probably would not be comfortable with multiple farm ponies using proper scientific tests, given that she was very uncomfortable with just Applejack.
I would like to add that it's very unclear what exactly it is that she was trying to study.
I think it's the effects of farm work, how it affects them physically and mentally, although she does say just to stare at like how it affects the body mostly.
Right. So to describe effects like that, there needs to be a control. And and there's no control here.
It's just Applejack.
Yeah, it's so like in terms of rigor, it's not the study doesn't make sense.
That is why I thought for most of the fic that it was a fake study, that she was faking it in order to get close to Applejack, and then when it turned out to be real,
That's what I was
you're a
thinking
shit
too.
scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
Which
I
is
mean,
very
from
unlike her.
well,
Yeah, it's very out of character for her to be bad at science. She tried to prove the existence of luck before.
Yeah. I again, bad science. It
And by
again,
that we don't mean that weird, slightly unselly movie from the 80s.
or that would be weird science.
Was it weird science? Okay, it's still bad science, even if it's weird science. There we go.
Yeah. Another movie that doesn't stand up. However, also another movie that it would be like an incel fantasy, much like this.
Yes, that one's a bit more egregious about it, though.
Yeah. Ugh.
Okay then.
So we're
Good.
going on to final thoughts then. So, Cerridwen, we'll start with you, since you are the Fic Picker. What are your final thoughts about this story after our podcast?
I think it is funny. I think you have to forgive the way the characters are written and just enjoy it for what it is. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed reading this, portraying both. Yeah.
I will say, you voiced both characters. On your reading of it is somebody saying, well done to the narrator and to both of the VAs, because they thought there were 3 people. That's how good of a job you did.
Yeah, I was kind of confused, like, but there isn't anybody else. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Look
your
at
acting was
credits.
just so good that they didn't realise. That's like the height of compliments.
I'm
It was Cerridwen
confused.
all along.
It was Cerridwen all
Yeah.
along. It was
Compliments.
Cerridwen all along.
Compliments confuse me.
Like
Oh,
I
very
was
British of you.
listening to the audio reading over this last week, and I'll say that as someone who is very particular about like making sure characters sound like they're being acted, it was very well done. I will say there were a few times where your accent did slip through when voicing Applejack, but other than
Yeah.
those few moments, few and far between, very well done.
I think there are some words that just trip me up.
Yeah, I heard that, but it's all good.
It's weird to think this was your first fic.
I know.
Yeah, it was very well done for a first fic,
And
especially.
It was on your suggestion list of like, hey, does anybody want to narrate this? I'm like, I'll put my hand up. Anyone else? No. Okay. Okay. 1 year later, then it appears.
Yeah, and I wasn't expecting you to have edited everything together either. I was like, okay, you read the narration. Oh shit, she's done the whole thing. Hugely unprecedented.
It was Cerridwen all along.
It really was. She did all the editing too. I was part of none of that.
Next time, I'll just give you everything raw. Everything.
No. Okay, I want to know that. I was just fucking impressed. Especially when you said, oh yeah, I've never done one before. And I'm like, seriously? This is better than half the stuff I listen to from people who've been doing this for ages. Yes, my cat agrees.
Aw.
Milo,
Good
you come
kitty.
down. Hello, Milo. You can say hello.
Good kitty cat.
He's the more talkative of the two. The other one, Stellan, has gone to sleep where narrator was because he misses him. Literally, he heard him on the speaker earlier, and narrator was talking to his own cat and said, "Do you want to come and sit on my lap?" And Stella ran through, going, "Where is he?" And looking for where he usually sat on the couch, looking for a lap to sit on. So I've been thoroughly rejected by my own cat because they've decided narrator's better. So anyway,
I know
final
that
thoughts. Clever, final thoughts.
To anyone that thinks that I don't like this fic, based on what I've said, that's not true. I think it's a sweet little fic, and if you, like Cerridwen said, if you take it, I think how it's meant to be, which is just a cute little Twijack ship, then yeah, if you like Twijack ships and you like a little bit of flank in your imagination, then this is for you. If I'm being a bit critical about it, did I find it very funny? I didn't find it exceptionally funny. I did think it was written well. I didn't have a problem with reading it, and it was a good quick read. So yeah,
A far quicker read than our podcast has been about it.
absolutely. I think we spent
as much time talking about it as probably went into writing it and editing it and putting it up. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah,
guessing.
when
No
am I
idea.
going to learn that when I think it's a short fic, a short frothy fic, oh, we won't talk very long about that. 2 hours later.
Well, apparently it's all my fault, and I'm sorry.
3 hours at
Oh,
this
good.
point.
Yeah, we are nearly at 3 hours. Midnight, what are your final thoughts?
I really liked it. It's sweet. It's, yes, romantic in some ways, and it did make me chuckle at times. So yeah, it's a nice story. Could have been better in some places, but a nice story. I like it.
Midori?
I thought that it was a cute, simple little story with potential for more.
And Wooten?
AJ, but
I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. Right, okay, so we're now on to, for the first time in a while, actually spinning the wheel. Because what's happened over the last few podcasts I've noticed is there's always been someone in the podcast, like everybody else has picked something, and there's been one person. So there's no point in spinning the wheel. But today there's a couple of people, including Wooten, who has never picked before, so I've popped you all in the wheel. I'm going to spin it now.
Yeah, I'm no longer the sacrifice.
You volunteers tribute. Spin, 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 spin. Midori! So
Aha.
Midori, you have been chosen as tribute. What fic are we going to be analysing next time, Midori?
Okay, let me know if you guys have already done this on Them's Writin Words before. I have a backup, but have you done Morton the Last Necromancer by Secret Agent Plot Twist?
No.
That's quite the name.
I love it.
No, we have not done that one.
Intriguing.
Then that is my choice. And for all of you, as a special treat, Ilya Leonid has done a audiobook version of this story.
Wow.
In
Oh,
fact,
excellent.
it was so beloved that the writer has actually put links to Ilya's audiobook version of it on the Fix posting on Fanfiction.
I've just brought this up. Secret Agent Plot Twist. Are you alright, Midori? This is a dark fic?
It's dark comedy.
Yes.
Okay.
My favorite kind.
That's up my street
Intriguing.
then.
The entire story is done in the perspective of letters being sent to Celestia. It is hilarious.
Well, that seems very appropriate considering that fic will probably come out around Halloween time on my channel. That is well picked. Wow. Okay then, so next time we shall be doing Mortem, the nasty necromancer. Wow. We'll be doing Mortem.
The nasty
The
necromancer.
yeah. What Midori said. We'll be doing what Midori said next time. Thank you very much
Morton
for
the Last
coming.
Necromancer.
Morton,
Right.
the Last Necromancer.
Thank you for coming, everybody. I have been Scribbler. It's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Cerridwen.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Clever.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Midnight.
Bye.
Goodbye from Midori.
Adios, muchachos.
And goodbye from Wooten.
Don't come.
Oh my god.
Oh god.
You never say what I am thinking you're going to
Don't
say.
come
You say,
again.
I can't predict.
That made me snort so hard. I have a sore throat now.
Oh no, you broke Midori.
No. Quick, get some hot tea.
I'm
Tea
sorry.
with honey, stop.